This is Jocko podcast number 442 with Echo Charles and me, Jocko Willink. Good evening, Echo.
Good evening.
The phones are blowing up with requests for help. We've never said no to a family, whether they can pay or not, said Dean. A former British Special Forces soldier and friend of Prince Harry has flown to Israel to help evacuate people within 24 hours of Hamas attacking. Dean Stott, who is a member of Britain's elite special boat service, the Special Forces unit of the Royal Navy, was on the ground in Tel Aviv almost immediately helping after Jewish friends asked him to help. Stott, 46, and his team are helping people anxious about the deteriorating situation get to Ben Gurion Airport or leave via Jordan. His wife, Alana, is masterminding the operation from their home in California. 2 years ago, the husband and wife team helped evacuate people from Afghanistan, and Stott evacuated the Canadian embassy in Libya in 2014. We know how to do extractions. You need to get in fast because you don't know if airspace is going to get shut down, Stott said from Jerusalem. I saw it on the news, and within 30 seconds, we were getting calls from friends. We just got home from Disneyland. I was there in 24 hours and helping the first family. And that right there is an excerpt from an article by Ben Clerkin, published on October 13th, 2023, in the aftermath of the Hamas attack in Israel. And you may recognize the name Dean Stott. Dean was a British soldier, as mentioned in the article, a member of the elite commando unit, the Special Boat Service, where he completed multiple combat deployments around the globe until he was injured in a parachute accident and forced to retire. But while he did retire from the military in 2011, he was far from actually retired. And in the following years, he built a business in the private security sector where he dealt with extortion, kidnapping, civil war, pirates, military coups. In 2014, he planned and executed the evacuation of the Canadian embassy in Libya, rescuing 4 diplomats and 18 military personnel. On top of all that, in 2018, he set 2 world records: the fastest bike ride of the length of South America and the fastest bike ride on the Pan American Highway. And he covered much of this in his book, outstanding book. It's called Relentless, which we discussed when he was on the podcast about 3 years ago, episode 270. So if you want to hear about his past, you can listen to that podcast, 270. You can get his book, Relentless. But for tonight, Dean is back here with us to discuss some of his latest efforts, which include not only evacuating people from Israel, but also some new adventures into entertainment and assisting veterans and victims of human trafficking with mental health and a host of other trials and tribulations. Dean, you've been a busy man. Thanks for coming back.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
So prior to the Israel evacuation, when you went in there to help out, 2021, Afghanistan, what did you guys do over there? Because I know you got some people out of there as well, like quite a few people.
Yeah, so we were back at home, and obviously everyone was seeing everything unfold on the news. We were working with a number of agencies. We had a lot of connectivity on the ground. I had an organization I was working with, and they had a medical facility. It's been open for the last 10 years. And so we had the footprint, but we weren't really physically getting involved. I was offering advice. And then I think we talked about in the last podcast, I was going to do a challenge. I was looking at kayaking the River Nile. And while I was doing this training process, I got introduced to a gentleman called Jim Ross, who's works at Epic Kayaks, one of the best kayakers in the UK, trains the GB team. But his wife, Annabelle Ross, she was ex-military, worked with the UN, and she had a friend, and I need to get the name right, Soraya Paxad was this woman. She was a women's rights activist. And she basically set up one of the first underground schools in Afghanistan back in 1998.
Dang.
And then in 2001, when obviously the troops came in, it went to full scale. But she's, back in 2009, she was listed in the Times 100 most influential people. There's photos of her with Condoleezza Rice. And America turned her back on her. She was trying to get out and they wouldn't do anything about it. So she reached out to Annabelle, who knew obviously mine and Alana's story with the previous evacuations. And she said, can you help us? So Alana and Annabelle were coordinating, and this lady Soraya said she wanted to come out. So
do you remember like when she contacted you?
Yeah, I remember when Annabelle contacted me, it was literally, WhatsApp and Signal is a great tool in all of these stories, whether it's Israel or Afghanistan, the amount of WhatsApp groups you had. So she messaged and said, look, we've exhausted all our options. Can you help? And so I put on to Alana, and then Alana started making some phone calls with the guys that we had on the ground and some of the other agencies. And unlike the Libya evacuation, unlike the Israel evacuation, this was very much almost like a paper exercise. It was a box ticking exercise. Do you have a passport? Yes. Do you have a host nation? Yes or no? If not, where can we actually potentially take them? Do you have family in any other countries that we can take you to? And so literally that's what it was. It was a paper exercise. And Alana managed to get her paperwork. But the issue we had is she ended up turning up at the airport with 19 gills. She goes, I'm not leaving without these gills. And so there was a lot of dialogue back and forth. We were also having to communicate with the British forces, the adjutant of the parachute regiment. We were also communicating with the American forces as well. And so, looking at it from an outside, you would have thought that the US military and the UK military had a lot of communication and crossover. A lot of the actual communications was coming through third parties, whether it's private security industries or what. So we ended up in the end getting her out. And
what about the 19 girls?
And the 19 girls, we got them out in the end. And in the end, their host nation wasn't the US. We got them to Germany. So that really then started the whole waterfall effect, because as soon as people realized that we were back on the radar, we were getting phone calls all the time. And Alana and I were having to really just stagger through the night, because as you can imagine with the time differences as well from the US. So I think at one point we had something like 68 WhatsApp groups, and we had everything from the British Boxing Association telling me that the Afghan boxing team were at risk. And so what you had here is, because it was on the world stage, you had everyone almost jumping at this opportunity to leave. There was those that were eligible to leave who had worked as interpreters for the UK and the US forces. But there was then, I think it was the wording that you were potentially at risk because of what you did or the Taliban. So things like Soraya, yes, she's at risk because, these underground schools, the Taliban don't want any of that. And so we were dealing with all sorts of requests. And at the time, as you would have seen, there was a lot of veterans who wanted to get involved. There was a lot of non-profits now getting involved. I had everything from, the Real Housewives of Orange County, but it wasn't really the Real Housewives of Orange County, but similar sorts of groups who who had funding and wanted to help any way possible. So it was great to see humanity, to see the amount of people wanting to get involved, but it then started to become a really messy situation, because you have to make sure that all that relevant paperwork is in place. You can't just take people out. You can't just give them the wrong advice, tell them to go to the Pakistan border and things like that. So we were really trying to have to navigate that and sort of ease people's minds. 'Cause it was a difficult one, because we had to say no to a lot of people because they didn't fit the protocol. They didn't have the right paper. Didn't have the host nation. But other people were saying yes without really understanding the nuances involved with these evacuations. So you have a thing called the FAR, which is the Federation of American Immigration Reform. And they are now investigating so many groups, non-profits, for human trafficking, because people were just wanting to help, but not really understanding, the aftermath. So what we're seeing now, 2 years later, is a lot of people managed to get into Pakistan without passports, without the right paperwork. But there's an agreement between the Pakistan and the Afghani government now, is that they have 2 years to get their paperwork in place. If it's not in place, then they go back. And that 2 years is now coming up. And the Taliban know that. So there's a lot of people now who were helped by these groups who really didn't understand what they were doing, who now are going to end up going back. So for me and Alana, it was difficult because, and it was heartbreaking because we had to say no to so many, but we couldn't compromise what we do, because like I said, this is just one country we've done it. We do it all over the world. So for us moving forward, I didn't want to be investigated for human trafficking. And as you know, Alana is an ambassador for human trafficking herself. So we had to be really airtight.
Mm-hmm. What was your reaction when you saw Afghanistan going down like that after you fought there?
Yeah, it was hard to watch. You know, we've been there 20 years. You know, what was different about Afghanistan compared to likes of Israel, Libya, Sudan, and all these other places is the fact that the other evacuations was a crisis response. It's because there'd been an incident like the Hamas incident. We had a foothold in there for 20 years. It wasn't a surprise that we were leaving. And so for me, I think there was just that rush to get out before September 11th. I think it was disrespectful to the servicemen and women that had been out there, the servicemen and women that had fallen, their families, and also disrespectful to the Afghanis. You know, that's one that stands out for me. You know, we went in there to help, and you know, you look 20 years on, did we make much of a difference? I think we may have done, but I think it only took them 9 days. 9 days to capture everything that we'd taken in 20 years. You know, each province was falling, each city was falling. And so for me, I think it was disrespectful, and it was handled very poorly.
Yeah, it certainly was handled very poorly. And to make real changes like in a country like that, you got to stay there for a long time. And, you know, America hadn't taken a combat casualty in, I think, 18 months when we were there. So it's not like we were embroiled in some crazy combat. It was sort of a police effort that was going on, and really from the rear just reinforcing what was happening and keeping a level of stability there. And everybody that had been there or even paid attention to what was going on there knew that the Afghans weren't ready to handle the Taliban. It's the same thing that happened when we left Iraq. Everybody that had fought in Iraq, when we left Iraq, everyone knew what was going to happen. And yet still we just walked away. And it doesn't take a huge contingent. It's like when you're at hey, Echo Charles, you're a bouncer, right?
Yes,
you were
sir.
a bouncer back in the day?
No doubt about it.
How many bouncers does it take to keep a club of 300, 400 people, 500 people under control? Yeah. How many bouncers does it take?
I don't know. 6 to 8.
6 to 8 bouncers. Yeah. And you can control 600 to 800 people. And why is that? Well, because the person that causes problem, he knows he's going to get dealt with by the bouncers. Yeah. And so that's kind of what you have in these countries. It was like, yeah, hey, the bouncers aren't participating in the game, right? Maybe a little bit. Maybe
here and there.
They shouldn't be, but they're not actively participating in the game. They're just making sure that the game is being played correctly and it's all good. And if someone gets out of line, they remove them. So that's kind of the situation in Afghanistan and Iraq. We were the bouncers. The party was going on. We were making sure that people were behaving properly. No one was abusing anybody. No one was getting harassed. Making sure no one's getting out of control. And that's what was happening. And after a while, you can go down to 3 bouncers. And after a while, you can go down to two bouncers. But in terms of countries, that can take generations to get there. And we just, I guess just for purely political reasons in both those cases, it was, oh yeah, we're going to leave now. And we just left.
Just all bouncers
out. Yeah, all the bouncers left. And by the way, there's gang members in there. Known gang members that are drunk and maybe a little coked up. Yeah. And maybe they've been, had a rough day too, so they got problems. They got like mental issues.
Sure.
But they're in there with normal people.
Yeah.
And what's going to happen to the normal people? Exactly what happened in Afghanistan. The normal people go, well, I guess the bouncers left, so I'm just going to do what this freaking thug tells me to do. Otherwise, I'm going to get I'm going to get freaking stuck with a knife.
I think there's also the fact that they've underestimated their enemy. You know, you look at history. The UK have been over there 3 years. Actually, when I was there, the Taliban, the Afghanis hate the Brits more than the Americans. You know, we haven't been able to defeat them, and so I think it was a lack of respect for the Taliban. It was a lack of respect for the Afghanis. But the other failings as well is the fact that at the airport they had a database of all the names of the people that have been working with the UK and US forces, and they just left it. And so when they flew off, they just literally handed them back over. I say, like now, obviously, like the Taliban, we were actually working with Taliban agents during this whole process as well, because actually at the time the world was like, the Taliban didn't want there to be an incident during this handover, because they told the world, we are better. The Taliban from 2001, to Taliban 2021 are two different people. That's what they wanted to show to the world. So they didn't want there to be an incident. Obviously, it was ISIS-K that came in and did that. So we were actually working with these Taliban. They were helping us, get us people from safe houses, which people aren't aware of. And again, it was just the fact, because the world was watching, it was so easy for the likes of ISIS-K. There was a hotel called the Baron Hotel. So you had the Abbey Gate where the incident was. The Baron Hotel was about a mile from the Abbey Gate. And, it's almost like a processing center for everyone who wants to go out. And they were just telling everyone to stay in that hotel. And we're like that. So for us, we had alternative options with safe houses. But again, the Taliban, they were trying and they were helping during this process, which people don't seem to understand. They think they're always the bad ones, but it was the ISIS-K that took advantage of that.
Yeah, and the Taliban's like, oh, the bouncers want to leave? Cool. Yeah, hey, we'll help you out. What do you want? You want some drinks on your way out? What do we need to do to get you out of here? Let's go ahead and proceed. We'll take over. We got this. Yeah. Of course, they're going to escort the bouncers out the door. So as you're getting this, how many people did you end up getting out of there?
It was over 1,000 people we ended up getting out, or assisting getting out, and some of them as well. A lot of them are even our clients, but there's a lot of security companies that, I talk about the big five, probably the big five out there, and they're rubbing shoulders with insurance companies. And so when these big corporates, oil and gas, NGOs, want assistance, they obviously listen to the insurance provider and said, you need to go with these guys, they're multi-billion-pound industries. But I've seen it before, the failings in them. They don't actually have plans in place. And actually one of the big five didn't realize they weren't actually insured for Afghanistan. And so when they pressed the button, they couldn't do anything. And so, and I'm talking some of the biggest names out there. And so literally they then had to look at who else was available. And I've seen it in all of these countries to go to. The biggest players always fail. It's always the smaller security providers. But it's something that it riles me up. It riles me up because, they are charging 6-7 figure sums to these crisis management evacuation plans. And actually, when you scrape the surface, it's not actually in place. And so for me, my advice to these corporates is, yes, when you have insurance, challenge, ask questions to the security provider, ask them questions, because these security companies, they have rotations, and another guy will come in 6 months. Has he proven those routes? Has he pen tested? I did one once for a client out in Colombia, a big mining company, and I sat down with the security provider. And because that's what we do, we sometimes come in and can help security companies. We don't want to come in and take over. We're not that big, but we can offer our advice. And so I asked him for his evac plan from the mine. And, he showed me this Google Maps. Google Maps. I was like, okay, perfect. I said, well, can we prove this route tomorrow? He said, yeah. I knew it was raining that evening. That road was impassable. And so I said, so what's your secondary option? And he said, oh, we don't have a secondary option. And so for me, is that these are the things you want to be, these corporates, they don't actually read the terms and conditions, the small print, and they soon realize actually these security companies aren't responsible for taking them out. Mm-hmm. And so, there's been a lot of failings and errors, and that was really highlighted during Afghanistan when one of the biggest providers really realized that they actually weren't insured.
So what's the name of your company that does that? So if I have a company and I have people overseas and I've got insurance, but this seems like a really smart thing to do, and I work with a lot of international companies. If you're looking at your security situation, you have insurance, you've got a plan. Yeah. But to have somebody, a second set of eyes, come in and take a look at that plan and review it, that seems like it would be a very smart thing to do. What's your company that does that? Where can people get that?
So that's literally me and my wife. We don't actually. It's SCI, which is Stott Consultancy Inc. So we don't even have a website because literally it's all word of mouth. We managed to build up a reputation where people tend to come to us. It's been quite interesting because we are a husband and wife. Some of these big organisations can be quite dismissive, and then actually they end up coming back to us eventually, but. With us, we don't need to have a huge company. You know, there was back in 2013 when the Prime Minister of Libya asked me to come help. I managed to upstand 150 SF guys from around the world, so we can upscale and downscale depending on what the task. So where we have the luxury is that we have a great network around the world, and we would find the subject matter expert specific for that region. I wouldn't just have the same team deployed everywhere around the world, because as you know, there's cultural differences along the way. So for us, that's what we do, and we tend to come in, do it's like a security vulnerability assessment, see what it is you have, and identify where your vulnerabilities are. You know, it's not just in these corporates doing evacuations. We now work in family offices as well. You know, a lot of these family offices are unaware of how at risk they are, whether it's from cyber or from physical. And so that's what we do, just bring a team in, and we would just design the team around whatever the task is.
You know what red cell is, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys are like doing full on red cell in a way. Maybe not the physical part of red cell, but the mental.
Yeah, I think the mental side of red cell. I don't know if you've ever seen. It's quite interesting. When we speak to clients, they tend to come to us with problems, and I want to say we're like fixers, but it depends on how you interpret that terminology. But there's a show actually. I think it's called Scandal. And there's a woman called Olivia Pope, and she just basically helps, whether it's politicians, big corporates that are going, and this is very similar to what Alana does. Alana, behind the scenes, she's done a lot of forensic investigatory due diligence. She has access to the free letter agencies, the dark web. So you tend to find it. I'll give you an example. Maybe a company that's going to go public. You always tend to find just before a company goes public, some dirt comes out, and it's corporate espionage. And so Alana and her team, and she has again a great network. They will come in and try and fix those problems. So when we jump on these calls and have these meetings, I always say to the clients, because they see me front of house, they think they're getting Dean Stott, and I'm like, well, actually, there's Alana's going to be doing everything else. I said, if you see me, then it's all gone wrong. It means I've actually come to rescue you. And so over the years, and again, we don't need a website. We're just literally getting referrals from people like, well, these people may be able to help you. But I had one once with JP Morgan, Chase Bank. One of the head directors is like, well, why do I call you and I don't call this big security company? And I said, because it saves you one phone call, because they all tend to call us anyway. So what I found in the security industry when I started out, there was the big 5 companies, and I would get a phone call, and I get a phone call from 3 of those big companies, and they would say, oh, are you available for Uganda next week? And I know that they're all bidding for that one contract. Yeah. And then when they get it, they then come to you. And so there's a lot of guys out there like me working on the ground who actually do the work. And so with the big companies, they tend to mark it up because they have overheads, they have offices, they have staff that they've got to pay. And so the price inflates. And so what I explain to clients is, well, if you come to us, you take out the middleman, and it's at least 50% reduced price, and you're still getting the same product. Yeah. But I think it's just that whole perception, because they're multi-billion pound industries, because they have some of the biggest insurance companies behind them, they think these guys are the best, but they then still go, come back to us anyway.
So was the people that you got out of Afghanistan, was that business, or was that voluntary, or was it a combination of both?
That was a combination of both. For us, we actually, Alana and I didn't make a penny. The organization I mentioned that had the medical facility, they of course were having to make money. But it's really difficult because, and it's a hard one. I think the Canadian embassy, I charged $7,000. That was it, because that's all I needed to get them out. The Israel evacuations, we didn't make a penny. And so for me, I don't like to take advantage of people's misfortune or being in a situation, because not all of them could afford it. So, but what we can do on that reputation, we get that later on. And so when some of the big corporates come, but don't get me wrong, if there's a big corporate and they have deep pockets, then yes, we would utilize that. But where we try and get people out there for free is there's chartered flights. And some of these charter flights are half full. And I'm like, what can we get these people on? And that's what Alana manages as well. She sort of navigates behind the scenes, finds out where there's seats available, and we can get people out at no cost, because those who have money can get out. Those who don't or don't have much money really struggle, and they are just as at risk as the others as well. And that's where I try to distance myself from the emotion. I'm very good at actually distancing myself from emotion. I don't even really know. That's why I've had to write down the people's names, because it's not because I have no empathy. But when I'm on the ground, I can't get emotionally connected to them, because when it comes to situations, I don't want my emotions to blur my vision on my decisions. Whereas Alana does. Alana gets emotionally involved, which is hard. You know, she's a woman, she's a mother, and everything else. So she's like, yeah, we're getting them out for free. I'm like, how are we getting them out for free? But she'll work out a way. So if we can make money, then of course, because we still need to pay the boots on the ground. But majority of the time, we will try and minimize that cost. But I get upset when you see organizations that fly in planes in and they're charging $5,000 a seat. I'm like, you can afford that plane, you know, just get them out. You know, the PR itself would benefit you. Yeah.
So moving to Israel, October 7th, how'd that go down from your perspective?
So Alana and I had been invited to Disneyland. There's a place called, I don't know if you heard it, Club 33. It's like a private members club within Disneyland. Yeah, I've never even heard of it.
Echo Charles?
No, bro. No, I don't
No?
know. I don't know that.
Oh, you Google Club 33. It's like
we'll look into it.
Walt Disney's little private members club. So when you go to Disneyland, it has all these, you see little 33 on the doors, and there's these hidden bars and restaurants behind the scenes and stuff.
Dang.
Yeah. I think it's actually I don't know how expensive it is, but it's quite expensive to be a member. But you have to obviously visit so many times a year, and you know, to maintain your membership. And so for us, we got invited as friends. We never took the kids. You don't queue for any of the rides and things like that. But so Alana and I were in October 7th. We're in Disneyland, of all places, and my phone started firing up, and I could see it was sort of unraveling in Israel. It wasn't until the next morning I woke up and we put on the TV, and it, you know, everyone now realized, you know, the aftermath of what had actually happened on October the 7th. And I got a text off a good friend of mine who's a big lawyer in New York, and a Sri Lankan guy, and his auntie and uncle were on holiday in Bethlehem. And you know, the tour guide in Bethlehem's like, no, we're going to carry on with the tour. And obviously he's like, no, I need to get them out. And so before I'd even turn around to Alana's already booked me a ticket to Israel. I was like, oh, she goes, I think you need to go out there, you know, because time is of the essence. We didn't realize, you know, we didn't know what was going to happen. Yeah. You know, we didn't know whether the airspace was going to shut down, which makes it more difficult to go in. But unlike Libya and Afghanistan and some of the other places, Mozambique and places we've been to before, I'd never been to Israel. And so I'd never actually ever been into the country itself. So whereas like Libya and Afghan, we had infrastructure in place, we had safe houses, we had security providers, we had drivers, we had local fixers. I didn't have any of that in Israel. I had a couple of names of security providers, guys I knew I'd worked with on the circuit, and so I sort of messaged them. And so Alana booked me a ticket. It was Turkish Airlines. We went straight to the airport, and by the time I got to the airport on October the 8th, this was like just about noon, Turkish Airlines had already cancelled their flight. You know, all flights to Israel were cancelled, and now all the American airlines had cancelled their flights as well. So we started heading back home, and Alana's still looking online. She doesn't stop. And then El Al, which is an Israeli airline, had now opened up all their flights. They literally opened up more flights to get as many Israelis back to Israel. So she says, there's a flight this evening, El Al. So turned straight back around and went back to LAX. And as I was in the queue, this lady actually, so every operation we have, you know, so Afghanistan, you know, the Brits called it Op Pitting, the Americans Operation Allied Refuge. We called it Operation Alaman. I always give it a name. You know, the Canadian embassy was Beaver Tail. And so when I got to the airport, this lady just gave me this little book called Zohar. So that was the name of this operation for me, was Operation Zohar. But you could sense as well, as soon as you got to the airport, there were families there. People were upset. But there was actually families, full families going back out. Normally when you go into places like this, everyone's wanting to come out, but there's people actually wanting to go back in. And I'm stood in the queue, and Israeli intelligence, this gentleman comes up to me, two of them, and asked Alana to step back as he asked me questions. And he said, so who are you going to see? And I said, I don't know. He said, okay. He said, do you have a letter? I said, no, sorry, I don't have a letter. He's like, so who are you? And I said, oh, we're SCI, we're a security company. He said, great. He said, do you have a website? I said, no. I don't have a website. So this guy, I'm being fully transparent to him. He's like, this guy's pulling the wool over my eyes. I'm stood there literally 5'11", head to toe, looked like a PMC. I said, no, we specialize in evacuations. And he then Googled me, and he then went off. And his friend then said to me, he goes, are you in MI6? I said, look at me. I said, I'm too big for MI6. And he actually came back and waved me through. So that was the hardest thing about getting into Israel.
Was that once you were on the ground there, or is that taken off?
That was actually taken off. That's before you could even get on the flight. Yeah, that was LAX. That was the hardest thing. So I knew once I'd got through that, I'd be fine in landing. And actually, he pulled me aside just as I was boarding the plane and wished me the best of luck. And so Alana went straight back. Alana headed home. She then started messaging people we knew from the Jewish community, people in London and New York and LA. It was a 13-hour flight to Tel Aviv. I landed, and everyone was cheering on the plane, and already my phone's
so firing. The atmosphere going in, this is October 8th or maybe 9th now?
Yeah, this will be probably landed on the morning 9th, yeah, because of the time difference.
And people were cheering as you were coming in?
People on the flight were cheering and clapping that they'd sort of come home.
Wow.
Yeah, which for me was surreal. It was so different from the other projects that we'd done, because we knew who we were getting. We already had a name of people. We already had a plan. We had infrastructure in place. This was almost like, right, we need to go in and sort of do it from the inside out. But when I landed in Tel Aviv, it's a beautiful place. The sun was shining, and as I said, my phone had now fired up. I think Alana had over 50 families that needed assistance. That's literally just through the network we knew the Jewish community. So she gave me my first address, which was just outside Jerusalem. So landed at Tel Aviv. One of the guys I'd messaged that was coming in, he had a driver pick me up and drove me straight to this family. So just so the audience are aware, so October the 7th, it was right in the middle of a Stott holiday. It was a big Israeli holiday. So there was 10,000 families alone from New York and Boston in Israel. So there's a lot of families there. And so we were trying to literally coordinate and help them. But actually, atmospheric-wise, in Jerusalem, because it was so close, within 36 hours of the actual incident, there was a huge presence of police and military on the ground. Everyone had guns, and so it probably was the safest place on Earth. Mm-hmm. And so we helped coordinate getting people out. What was difficult with this was, again, it was the flights. It was the chartered flights. Flights were getting cancelled. But you then also found that flights were getting cancelled because, again, people wanting to help. I remember I got introduced to a lady from one of the YPOs in New York, it's a Young Presidents Organization. It's a very successful businessmen and women. And she said, look, I've chartered a flight. I want it full. So we ended up having this flight. But actually, the flight she chartered was one of the original flights, one of the domestic flights, and they just sold it to her. And then so we had people already on that original flight who now taken off, and then she was about to charge double. But in the end, Alana managed to get them all on for free. But because flights were opening and closing, you had to be quick and you had to be online. So there was a lot of elderly people there who don't really understand the internet, and so you had to make decisions in buying in tickets. And so Alana, you didn't have time to then liaise with the son or daughter back in New York and London. You literally had to make that decision and buy it. But again, with this, because I call it the media monster, what the media monster was portraying on TV to actually what was happening on the ground were two different things. Yes, in Gaza, it was about to go off, but actually in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, it was very safe. So I'm going to these people, these families, and elderly people, and say, look, I've come to get you out. And they're like, oh no, we're happy to stay. And I'm like, well, you need to speak to your son and daughter because they're literally, going mad back at home. So, but there were the people that wanted to get out. We had, I think the first 4 days, because of the time zones, Alana would literally give me lists and names of families. And by the time I'd done that in the day and I was just about to rest, New York woke up and then LA woke up, and I literally would have my next list of people. So the first 4 days I had very limited sleep, and I'm breaking protocol. And I think it's when I messaged you, unlike the other evacuations where we already had, as I said, people to get in, and we would fly in under the radar and come out until the job was done. We obviously had to make people aware that I was there. So if any people did need any assistance, that they can contact us. So totally against my normal protocol, I was on social media, and Alana sort of jokes because I was like, yeah, I'm within 36 hours, quite safe. And she's like, yeah. She goes, for you it's safe. And she said, but for others it's not. And I remember doing a couple of TV interviews in like the Jewish Chronicle, and I'm in the old city of Jerusalem, probably the most holiest place in the world. And I actually said on TV, I said, look, I'm not a religious person, but I do believe in good and bad, and so I'm just here to help, and get people out, because it was very difficult when you first got there. It was so raw. The Jewish people were so angry and things like that, and so then on social media you're seeing dialogue going back and forth, people telling us, I hope you're not rescuing these, hope you're not rescuing them. For us, as we touched on with the later on, I just finished filming in Jordan. We did an episode in Jordan, and so we had fixers, drivers. I knew the colonels in the special forces. I even knew everyone up to King Abdullah, who runs the country. And so we had the option of getting people from Israel over to Jordan. That was an option for us. It wasn't an option really, mainly a lot of the Jewish weren't comfortable with that, but people, Christians, Catholics, Buddhists, they were happy to do that route. But in fairness, we did get a lot of Jewish people across King Abdullah Bridge into Jordan and out on Amman. So again, people didn't realize that actually the Muslim community were also helping, but the media portrays something different. But going back to social media, I think I sent you and a couple of the military influencers my video. I said, do you mind sharing, just let people know we're here? And this is where I see the good in social media and the power of social media. I then get you shared it that morning. I then get a message of a lady called Elizabeth. She goes, I don't know if it's going to go to you, Dean. She goes, I'm a big fan of Jocko and I've just seen you on there. And she goes, we're in the old city of Jerusalem. We're a Bible college. And we have 15 students. We can't get out. And so within 45 minutes of that message, because literally the old city was just around the corner, I was having a cup of tea with her and her husband, Matthew. And they're both from Huntington Beach originally. He's a pastor. They've been out there for 8 years. And they run this Bible college. And they had 15 students, 14 American and 1 Indian. And they'd exhausted all their options. All the flights were cancelled. They couldn't get them out. But they're under so much pressure from the families, to get them out. Yeah,
because the weird thing is at this time, like October 7th, 8th, 9th, like it was impossible to tell what was going to happen. Is Hezbollah going to get in this? Is Iran going to get in this? Is this going to be the beginning of World War III, which it certainly could have become. So if you're some random parent in here and your kid's over there going to college at this school, you want them out of there, and that's what you were trying to make happen.
Yeah, it's true, because at this point, there was the trouble in the south with Gaza, as you rightly mentioned there. Hezbollah, because I think where the Israelis got the green light from the UK and the Americans to wipe out Hamas and terrorists, that doesn't just end with Hamas and Hezbollah. So it was an opportunity for them to get involved in the war. So that was the worry I had, because at the moment the airspace was still open, because you're with Hezbollah and Lebanon not being involved, you can fly in via the north. But should they get involved, then that whole airspace would be shut down. And so that was the worry people were having, as you rightly put. If this escalates, there may not be an option to get them out by air. And we always look at the 3 options. There's the land, which was to Jordan. There was the air. And we were already looking at options for Cyprus as well. And so, yeah, these couple were distraught. And she said she woke up that morning and she prayed. And she picked up my phone and she said, I wonder what Jocko would do. That's what she said. She literally said, I wonder what Jocko would do. And she opened up and she saw me there. So I went and spoke to them. I said, yeah, it's not a problem. We can get you out. We can help getting you out anyway. And so again, Alana gets emotionally involved. She knows all the names of the kids. I still don't know any names. And 48 hours later, it sounds very sexy. There's me dragging these suitcases with 15 students straight out of the old city of Jerusalem. And yeah, we all got them out at no cost back home.
So how are you funding this? I mean, even your flight costs $2,000, $3,000 to get over there. You're staying in a hotel somewhere. You got to. What are you doing to fund this?
Yeah, so we reached out to people, and Alana set up a GoFundMe page. And actually, what she then did, we had to look at the bigger picture moving on forward, because people were messaging us like, "Are you a non-profit?" Because some corporates can write off their tax if it's a non-profit. And so Alana Googled evacuationsupport.org, and no one owned the domains to that. So we bought the domains to evacuationsupport.org, and we will now, moving forward, turn that into a non-profit. And the reason for that is, A, it gives people the option to be able to donate, but also that incident I had at LAX, is if I go to LAX and then the guy asks me, do you have a letter? I say, yes, I have a letter. I have a company, and this is our mission statement. It sort of helps for that. So that's what was born out of that issue in Israel. We managed to set that up. But we had non-profits who were able to take the money, and then Alana could utilize that for the flights.
And then how long did you spend on the ground there?
So in the end, I was there just less than 10 weeks. By the end of the first, I'd say 5 days, everyone who wanted to get out was out. Everyone who's now in wanted to stay in, and there was still a lot of flights coming in. The reason for me, the rest of the days that I was there, we actually then...
Did you say 10 weeks you were
Sorry,
there?
2 weeks.
Oh, 2 weeks. Okay.
Sorry, 2 weeks, yeah. And the rest of the time I was there, we were then establishing safe houses, confirming the routes in and out, doing a handover with the Israeli guys as well. Because the reason I wanted to leave is I have to remain impartial. And it was very difficult to remain impartial in a country at that point. And the reason I had to remain impartial is because I didn't know if my next port of call was Lebanon. Mm-hmm. And so for me, once I realized that the infrastructure was in place, everyone who needed to get out was out, and we had, should there be any additionals, we could get them out. And then that was it. And I then pulled out then after 2 weeks.
What was the atmospherics when you landed on the 9th? People you said were angry. What were they like? What was the atmospherics and the attitudes like before you left?
Obviously, they've had time to absorb what was going on. Again, the troops are now starting to form up in and around Gaza. No one really knew what was going on. I think for me, one that surprised me, if you asked me prior to October 7th, we were one of the best intelligence services in the world. I'd say the Israelis, and the fact that they hadn't seen this, it still surprises me. So for me, I think there was an element of embarrassment. There was an element of anger still. So that was still boiling up in a lot of people. I stayed in the old city of Jerusalem, and you got the Catholic quarter, you got the Muslim quarter, and the Jewish quarter as well, and they all still live together. But all the shops were shut as well. It was just about to be their busiest time of the year, and so I think a lot of people wanted a quick resolution. But I didn't think that's going to happen. I think obviously Israel see this as an opportunity, and they want to take out Hamas, and they'll continue to do so.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see the postmortem from the intel side on how this happened. And to me, it seems like it would be one of these cases where when you can't see the thing that's right in front of your face, or the thing that it's such a massive attack with guys with paragliders and stuff like this, it's almost inconceivable.
Yeah.
And so they're just not looking there. They're looking for this little attack here, or what little attack could happen over there. They're not thinking about this massive attack that's going to take place, all coordinated very well. So very, very disturbing to see. What advice do you have for people that are traveling to other countries? Maybe it's for work. I'm always surprised at where people go for vacation.
Yeah.
Like, I spend enough time going into places that are nasty. I don't like to go on vacation. I don't even like to leave, really. I don't even like to leave San Diego, let's be honest.
Yeah.
But if I have to go. But when you've got people that are either they're going overseas to let's say a questionable or a unpredictable, dangerous area, what advice do you give to people that are traveling like that?
I think for me is do as much research before you leave as well. We do a travel security advice training, whether it's for corporates or individuals. And every time there's an incident, it's because of naivety, people not understanding other people's cultures. And that's what I see all the time. And so I always say it's not the UK, it's not America. Things are done differently, but do your research. But don't. It's very difficult because we have .gov.uk. You may have one here like travel advice. If you listen to all that, you probably wouldn't leave San Diego. Even I'd be quite scared to go. So all these countries are beautiful, but every country as well has the good places and the bad places. I was in New York at a wedding 2 weeks ago wearing a Scottish kilt. Oh my God, I've never been so scared in my life. You know what I mean? So and it's the same in these other places. There's beautiful places and the places you stay clear from. So really just get educated on that, but on the cultures as well. Don't get caught short. As you've probably seen, the Turks and Caicos guys with their ammunition in there.
That's right.
Just simple things like that. Jurisdictions of what you have here in the US aren't the same abroad. But that's all I would say is just get educated. What I tend to do as well, some of the top tips I give them, I take a little, if you are nervous, take a little doorstop, rubber doorstop from Home Depot. Just kick it behind your door because you don't know who has access to the room keys. When you go to these hotels and they want to take your passport, you don't want to leave your passport. So go there, have photocopies of your passport already, so you're still giving them what they want. And so we go through a whole list of things to do from the moment before you leave, the moment you arrive, and coming back, and then again, try and enjoy yourself as well, whether it's vacation or business. Business is slightly different, but it is vacation. Don't listen to the media monster.
So is this a service that you offer to private individuals? If I am going on a trip to somewhere and I want to make sure that my family's going to be safe, do you offer like a little assessment?
Yeah, because we can do everything from the actual intelligence before you go on the ground, give you some atmospherics and actually say, maybe you want to look at another holiday spot. But then, and we've done it with some of the family offices before COVID, especially a lot of the British children. They used to have like a gap year at university and used to go traveling around Vietnam, Cambodia and Australia and things like that. And the parents used to be like panicking. So we would come in and we'd give those kids or those families that travel advice. We do an intelligence picture. We have everything from we have apps where we can actually track them as well. And you can actually geofence certain cities. So for example, if you're in Mexico City, we've had the elections recently and there's trouble in the north, we can geofence that and send you up-to-date information. So you're still being updated as and when you're on the ground. And then if it gets to to the extreme and the parents are still not happy, then we can put a team on you. But we also have a protective surveillance teams as well, which is everyone sees the close protection capacity where you physically see that person. There's a new setup now. It's protective surveillance where you're still delivering that, but they don't actually know you're there. There's a Saudi princess in London at the moment. She thinks her dad's let her go to London to university on her own. She's got a 6-man team on her all the time. She's not aware of that. so literally we can upscale and downscale depending on the threat. And even if there's no threat, sometimes just to ease the minds of the parents. But we've done it before where actually, I've said to the students when they're traveling, all right, if you've got any trouble, just call me. And then before you call your mum and dad, and then, we can work it out, because what I deem as potentially dangerous, risky, they have a different element of risk from me. They're a bit more risk averse than I am.
Yeah, of course.
And so sometimes, I can sort of ease their minds before they start flying the balloon up.
Do you offer insurance, like extraction insurance?
We work with some insurance providers. What I'm trying to do now with some of the insurance providers is actually say, well, look, if we come in and assess their evacuation plans and their mitigations and that they're adhering to it, surely you can bring their premiums down. It has to be a win-win for both. Otherwise, they'll be like, well, why are we going to do it? We're still paying insurance. But yeah, we do go back to the travel. We can either do it for families or we can do it for corporates. One of my clients used to be Siemens Energy, who used to go around the world. And if they had to have engineers to go out to medium to high risk, we would come in and give them advice as well. So yeah, we sort of cover the full spectrum, and they're going into places like Saudi Arabia. A good one with Saudi is, if you're a religious person, a Christian, you want to take your Bible, that's good. But if you have more than one Bible, you're a preacher, you get arrested. And they're like, oh, I didn't know that. So again, it's just that knowledge of the countries. There's the basic travel security awareness, but it's all about cultural awareness. That's one of my biggest things when I'm preaching or teaching.
What's some strange things that you've had to unwind for like a high net worth individual out there?
Oh wow. We've had everything from embarrassing these ultra high net worths who like in the public eye, and then there's an incident gone on a super yacht, and the press are waiting, back on the port, can we get this person out of their country? We have all sorts. I just for some of the things that come across our desks, me and Alana, I'm like, surely this is like a movie, and it's not. Obviously, you ought to be mindful of what I say, but some of them, some of them will gamble off a super yacht, drunken, and they're like, right, okay, yeah. Next day, like, I've made a mistake. I said, yeah. So we'll come in and try and fix things. I mean, a lot of it, again, it's a lot of it's stupidity as well. It's not understanding your atmosphere or where you are. Where we're trying to help some of these family offices now is you have different family offices. The second and third generation money. The dad or the granddad, they're fine, but that's
because they worked for it.
They work for it. Yeah. And then the recipients now, the kids are just driving around in Lamborghinis.
There's something like the first generation makes it, the second generation keeps it, the third generation loses it.
I've heard that. Yeah. Third or fifth generation then loses, like start that. Again. Yeah. And that's again, it's like, when I speak to these family offices, these granddads or dads are like, we're fine, but their Achilles heel is their children. And they all have a digital footprint now. They're all, you look at a stupid example, the Kardashians, the incident in Paris. They literally they showed everyone all their jewels. They showed them where they were staying. So they only had one security guy, and they went to Paris, and they were obviously doing photos, doing selfies, showed everyone their jewelry, where they were, but they only had one security guy, and he ended up going out. I think they ended up splitting up. He ended up going out, and then the room got broken into.
How much money did they lose?
I don't know, millions. It was millions. But again, it's the social media thing we have in like the UK. We call it your soccer, like our Premier League. They have like an award ceremony each year in London. So all the players from Manchester United and Liverpool up north come down for it. So all their houses get targeted by the burglars. So so for me, it's when with some of these family offices is understanding your online presence. And Alana, actually, she has a program. So back in the UK, you had a thing called SOCA. It was like the equivalent of the FBI, Special Operations Crime Agency. And she taught child exploitation online protection, teaching you how to be safe. Because with human trafficking, it's all the grooming elements, targeting for kidnap and ransom. And so these families, they will pay, but you shouldn't have to. And a lot of family offices will look at the linear family, but actually, and have no protection on their nieces, nephews, and brother-in-laws and sister-in-laws, and they're the ones that get targeted, and they'll still pay. So
they get targeted for like kidnapping?
Some countries is kidnap ransom, yeah. They'll target them and kidnap them, take money, especially in the Latin American countries. It's quite rife.
And you do all this work without a website around this?
Yeah, literally our word of mouth. Yeah, my earlier years was, I took the risk going out and doing jobs that were quite risque. Then obviously the bike ride then raised my profile, and then people then realized actually Israel was interesting, because when I went to Israel, people were messaging me like, oh, you're back in the security industry. I was like, I'd never left. I was actually chatting to one of the head of stations in the Middle East, a CIA guy, and he's like, I've just Googled you. And I said, look, don't Google me. I said, there's two Dean Stotts. There's the one that the world sees, the books, the guest speaking, and the TV show. But that's only 30% of what you see, 70%, and so really that's sort of, generated more work. Because I did think people thought I had taken that sabbatical and was still on that sabbatical, but I just never really left.
Mm-hmm. I know you said you don't need many people to do it, but do you have like a number 2 person that you're going to bring up that could kind of run the business at some point? So you don't have to go on the ground in all these places?
Yeah, I have guys that I can, my number 2s now. You know, for me, I have to be mindful of the fact that we have a family. You know, for me, the great thing about working with my wife, Alana, is if I'm on that flight, she's greenlit it. You know, so she's giving me her blessing. You know, one of the things after the Canadian embassy, you know, I was only home 21 days in a 365-day calendar, and we got the whole yin and yang balance completely wrong. And the communication between us broke down. I thought she wanted me to be away, and she thought I wanted to be away. And so from that moment on, things changed. And so everything we do now has to be cleared between Alana and the kids. And they explain why daddy's going to have to go away. So it's more those high profile ones that I'll go out. But if I don't need to be there, I can put someone else on the ground. I do like to be on the ground for the very first time with a client, you know, to get the infrastructure in place and then just sort of hand it off. But yeah, I'm 47 years old now. I'm getting old, and you know my kids need me more at home. But yeah, actually, Alana, she's generating the most income really just on. I said she should set up a website called nosybitch.com, but you know what I mean, because they can find anything.
Yeah, it is crazy what's online.
Oh.
It's totally insane, and the way that I think AI is really gonna up that ability to collaborate and correlate all that information that someone has out there, and just like put together a profile of someone and be able to do what you want with it. Yeah. It's scary.
It's scary, and actually it's scary that what you can actually find just open source. That's what's scary. You know, I've done some security vulnerability assessments for some clients before, and without giving any names, there was a gentleman, a big hotelier, and he go online and he's donated so many $1 million to local university. It's him and his family, photographs. You know, you start following her on Instagram, you see where she is on holiday, and I actually went to his house, and we did a security vulnerability assessment, a beautiful house, and had all the right technology in place. He had the alarms, he had the buzzer, he had the cameras, all the sensors. But his mother-in-law and father-in-law were staying. They were very elderly, from India, and they were deaf pretty much. So every time we buzzed, they just let you in, thinking it was Amazon. So I was like, so literally, I had thousands of dollars of this technology, but it's not being used right. And then I could see actually he was when I was doing his assessment, I could see he was a cyclist. He had a couple of bikes, and so I then started following him on Strava. I mean, literally again, his name's on his real name. I mean, it's just literally the route taking him back to his house. So sometimes you can have all this infrastructure in place. It's just everything is online. You don't have to do a deep dark web. You can get so much information just through open source.
Craziness. So last time you were on the podcast, we covered your book Relentless that I talked about, and then you guys ended up, because that was a British release of that book, you guys ended up relaunching the book here in America. How'd that go down?
Yeah, so when we finished your podcast, prior to coming on the podcast, I think we'd only been in America about three months, and so my book had launched in September 19, so it was almost like 18 months really by the time I came on the podcast, and I get it, 18 months has passed. So I said to the publisher, I said, look, I'm about to go on Jocko's podcast. I think People magazine were also doing a 4-page special on the family. I said, look, it'd be good to get some books in place for demand. And they just brushed it off. They just brushed it off. You took me to number 1 on Kindle, and then I just got loads of messages like, how do I get the book? And Alana's the entrepreneur. Alana's like, spoke to the publishing house, and they said, well, look, you haven't launched in the US yet. And I said, no. He said, give me a price. And so they offered her a price, and we bought the rights for the US, North America. I mean, as you see, the difference between the two books is I then get I'm a brand ambassador for 511. And so I said, look, we're relaunching the book in the US. We're going to Americanize the book. So in the UK, we have like Serrano Fines on the front of that. I don't even know who Serrano Fines is. No. An SAS explorer. He's one of the most famous explorers in the world. He chopped his toe off in the Antarctic with frostbite and just carries on. He's an absolute legend. Sure. But here in the US, no one knows who he is. And so we got yourself to endorse the book on there. We got Admiral McCraven and Bear Grylls. But when we were doing the book covers, it was like that book cover is very UK. It's very dark. And apparently America's about light and hope. what 511 said. And so that book doesn't actually explain that actually I did a bike ride. It says world record breaker. And so we sort of watermarked the cyclist in the background. But that image with me with all that ammunition around my neck and a mini-me would never make the shelves in UK. But yeah, in UK,
Why
US,
wouldn't it make the shelves in the UK?
Just UK is almost like 15 years behind the US. You know, like things when you start talking about, you know, like plant medicine, and marijuana is illegal still in the UK. You know, they're not going to have people with guns on their front covers.
Really?
Yeah. So which is why it's very, very American. So we so 511.
That is a very American cover.
It's a very American cover.
Just a dude with a freaking
And it
machine gun and a big smile on his face.
And it literally says what it is. Obviously he's ridden a bike and that's his world record. There we go. So so you gave us inspiration for that, and then my wife went on and wrote. You know, I laugh because I say I'm an author. I had a ghostwriter. You know, if it was left to me, I'd still be on chapter 1. I was too busy. But my wife then went on and wrote her biography and a few books as well. So
how'd the ghostwriter process work? What do? They interview you basically?
So you get to interview them. Yeah. So when I got in and we signed the deal, they said, right, we can present some ghostwriters to you. You know, you interview them, see how almost that chemistry test. And the first guy they brought in was a guy called Geraint Jones, Jez Jones. So I don't know if you heard of 75 Hard with Andy Frizella. Yeah, Jez wrote 75 Hard for Andy as well. Yeah, and so I didn't know that at the time actually. And so, but Jez was he does a lot of fiction on the Roman legion stuff. He loves military history, but he's actually served as a reservist. Cool. So he knew the terminology and the slang of the military. And so we just hit it off. And so it was quite an easy process for me, you know, once we started, and we had a really tight timeline. We signed up in February and it had to be, you know, the first or completed by May. Which is short. Tight. Yeah. So him and I would have a phone call every day. He would, you know, he said, start from the beginning. So I start from the beginning. I'd just be talking to him, and then he'd do an hour. And then that evening he'd write 3,000 to 5,000 words, and we just keep repeating this. And then he'd send me the first proof, and then where he may have misinterpreted me, I just correct him and send it back. And it was actually really good because for me, I'm very particular. I like details. And so I would be talking about something and I'd just be going on and on and on, probably about this podcast. Let me just keep talking. And whereas he would, like, that, people don't care about that thing. Yeah. And I was like, but I'm always thinking in the mindset of my friends from the units, so the teams reading it. And he said, majority of people don't care. And so that was really good in the fact because people do read it, said it flows. And so if it was me, it probably wouldn't flow well. That's
an interesting argument. So when we wrote Extreme Ownership, and Leif was putting all these details in about the max effective range of this weapon and all this stuff. And I was like, bro, no one cares about that. But what's interesting is Jack Carr's book, the whole Terminalist series. Yeah. It's like the most granular detail about everything. And that's one of the things that people really appreciate about that. And I mean, those are two different types of books. I mean, obviously, Jack Carr's books are fiction and they're meant to entertain and they're sort of for people that are into that military stuff, whereas the book Extreme Ownership and Dichotomy Leadership and Leadership Strategy and Tactics, they're for normal people that don't care about the max effective range of a freaking 50 cal. So but when his book came out, when Jack Carr's books came out and Leif was reading him, he's like, dude, you should have let me put my stuff in here. And we were laughing about it. But yeah, that kind of detail, it is interesting for people that are into the military. Yeah. But for people that aren't in the military, it can be a little bit like, we don't care.
Yeah, I think with mine as well, because the book's really almost like it's in 3 phases. It's my childhood and military. Then there's the private security up until that time. And then the world records. So you've almost got 3 different books in one. So we didn't have time to put in detail. And so actually I don't even go beyond selection. I don't even talk about anything in the Special Forces, because at the time, you know, our SF disclosure is very different from the US. You know, you very tight restrictions on what you can and can't say. And for me, I didn't want to compromise my brothers that were still in. And so, that's why we couldn't really go into too much detail on certain things.
So how'd the relaunch go? You got it back out there?
Yeah, got it back out there. Yeah, as you know, they fluctuate. They go up and down. And my plan is to write another. I don't know if it's Relentless 2. I think of another name because obviously we have other stories. We have other evacuation stories, and we have other world record challenges. And so it's almost like mirrored, apart from my childhood, will be taken out. And so there was that common theme, lessons learned from the previous book going into the next book.
So while you're doing that, you end up in this TV show in Australia called SAS Australia, and you're in season 3. And from what I understand, you got offered that job early, and you said no to it at first.
Yeah,
and then you end up coming back and saying yes. What went down with that?
So in the book, I think it's chapter 14 or 15. Actually, no, it's actually later on. It's after the. Chapter 16, which is called Dead or Divorced, the conversation we're having. I took us back in 2015. I get an email from a gentleman called Andrew, and he's like, Andrew Slater, and he represents a company called Minnow Films. And he said, look, we're looking at doing this TV show. Do you mind if I fly up? And your name keeps coming up. Do you mind if I fly up and come see you? So he flew up to Aberdeen, and him and I sat down. And he told me about this concept of the show. And I think here in the US, it was called Selection. It was the same one as Selection with Marcus Capone. And he said, look, we're looking at doing this show, explained the sort of premises of it. He said, would you be interested?
Wait, did that show come out in America?
There was a show called Selection. Marcus Capone was the
No
host.
kidding.
Yeah.
He's been on the podcast. I didn't even know he had that show. We didn't even talk about it.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that.
No, yeah, I think they did one episode
Dude, how did
here.
I miss that? That's crazy. Okay.
Yeah, so we, so for me, I didn't really have anything to reference it from. Back in the 90s, there was a show with a guy called ex-SAS guy called Eddie Stone, and it was called SASU Tough Enough, and it was like, it's embarrassing, So for the SF community sort of like look at it and roll their eyes, and so that's what I was quite worried about, because again, when I'd only been out 4 years now, and everything I was doing, it's interesting. I didn't want to upset the community. It's all about what my keeping the community on side. And so I said to him, I said, look, I can do this show, but it needs to be cleared through the MOD. But a good friend of mine who was in C Squadron with me, Ant Middleton, he got dishonorably discharged. He then, when he came out, he ended up assaulting a policewoman, ended up in jail. So it was a whole spiral of errors. So he'd not long come out of prison, and so was struggling for work. And then another good friend of mine, the other host, Jason Fox, he suffered badly with PTSD. And so, in the security industry, he couldn't really work either. And so I messaged him. I said, look, I've been approached to do this show. I messaged them and a few other guys. And they said, look, yeah, we're happy to go along with this and see what happens. I got in touch with the security cell with the SBS, sort of made them aware, because what I don't want to do is flank them. They get upset when you surprise them. And within a week, I was back in Libya on the ground, and I get an email from the SF disclosure cell saying step away from this project. And so for me, I did, because up until this point, I was still flying under the radar. I hadn't done the bike ride. No one really knew who I was. And so they went on and filmed it. They went on and filmed it and never told the disclosure cell, which flanked them. So they ended up eventually all getting persona non gratis, but it actually ended up being the biggest show on Channel 4 in the UK in 10 years. It was huge. So although the SF group were slightly upset at the time, recruitment went straight up. So these guys ended up doing subsequent. I got asked again to do season 2. I still wasn't interested.
Were those ones in Australia or those?
No,
ones
they're still in UK. And then
so the first 2 seasons were in the UK.
I think they're on season what are they on now? 8 or 9 now in the UK.
Oh, damn,
yeah,
okay.
it's still going on. So they then sold it to the Australia, and then also now Fox have got it here in the US. So it's now in multiple countries.
Is it on TV right now in America?
It's on TV now on Fox. They call it Special Forces Toughest Test or something.
Okay.
Yeah. So my change in decision was when I was looking at doing my next challenge. It doesn't matter how many world records you got or how many millions you raised for charity. It's like how many Instagram followers you got. And I was like, really? Are we having this discussion? And so for me, I managed to keep the MOD on side. They fully endorsed my book. It went through with no issues. And so for me, in their eyes, they all knew that I turned down an opportunity as a quick fix to TV and then sort of done it this way. And I've always given back. And so I said, well, then SAS Australia reached out and they said, look, we're doing a show. Do you want to come on it? And it's right in the middle of COVID. It was quiet here. And so I said, yeah, why not? So I thought, well, it help me with the exposure. And then when I then launched the next challenge. So, yeah, I went out and filmed SAS Australia, which was great. And ironically, when we talk about the Afghan pullout, the Afghan pullout was in August. Halfway, beginning of September, I flew out to Australia and had 14 days quarantine in a hotel in Sydney. And I was doing a lot of, Alana was back here and I was in Australia, and we were still coordinated, because although everyone had left on like the 31st of August, there was still a lot of people to get out. So I utilized my time in quarantine there.
Australia was locked down.
Oh,
really hard, right?
Yeah, really. I knew it. I had family in Australia, and one of my family's in Melbourne. I think they're the most locked down city in the world, and they were distraught. But when I landed, it was like a scene out of E.T. Everyone was there in the white suits and the masks. The military would take you from the plane, and they would then process you onto the coach. I mean, there was a blue light escort on motorbikes to the hotel. The military would process you through into your room, and you have 14 days on your own in your room. You have one phone call a day with a nurse.
Man.
Yeah. Yeah. Man. Plenty of time to do podcasts, plenty of time to do evacuations.
That is just so crazy, isn't it?
Yeah. And one
especially, look, it seemed crazy at the time to me. I know Echo Charles thought it was kind of crazy because we were over here cruising hard. But yeah, looking back now with all the information that they have, they just did the Anthony Fauci testimonies and stuff yesterday. Did you watch any of that stuff? I saw some clips.
I heard about it. Yeah,
I saw some clips from it. It's just crazy to see that what they did, and especially again for people that were into it. People that kind of bought into the whole thing. The government really took a hit, and the media really took a hit as far as trust goes. But yeah, I can't imagine getting, what is it called, quarantined for 14 days after you get escorted to a hotel. So you had to stay in your room. What, did you get room service or something?
Yeah, so what they do, they would drop the meal at the door, and they'd knock on the door. But we had the luxury, obviously, the production company, they asked us if we wanted any. So I asked for
steak.
But also gym equipment. I wanted gym equipment in the room, so that was all there ready for you. So I was actually getting into quite a good routine. I'd get up, do some PT.
What's crazy is what about sunlight? What about fresh air?
Yeah, we had a balcony. We had a balcony, which was good. But one of the hosts, we had 14 days in there, and then we would then move to the site and do 14 days recce and 14 days filming. But literally, everyone had to be in the one hotel. All the crew and everything, and we get tested every day. And if there was one sign of COVID, they would shut the whole thing down. But on the 13th day in this first hotel, we get tested before we leave, and one of the guys tested positive. So I was like, how? Has you been here for 13? So he did 27 days in quarantine. Came out literally on the day we were about to start filming. And out of all of us, he's the one who's all about conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. And he's like, it's coming through the air, the air vents. He's like, oh yeah. So yeah, it was strange to see and witness. But for me, it was perfect. I got into a routine. I was able to help with the evacuations. I actually did Jack Carr's podcast remotely from Australia as well. Yeah.
That's classic. And then the format of that show is just like a bunch of challenges.
Yeah, the original concept was, what they wanted to do is, because I helped with the treatment back in the early days, because what they presented to me, and I was like, okay, it needs to be a bit more like this, but I always find now, especially TV, there's a fine line between authenticity and entertainment. So the very first season back in UK was, they literally got 20 members of the public, and they're all fit guys and girls, and they push them through these tests. And it's not like selection, you can't do that in 14 days. But now what it's sort of escalated into is they're almost like celebrities that have messed up in their careers, or sports people, and this is like redemption. And so they come on, and so, but they all have backstories as well. So as we're doing these tests with them, actually the good thing to watch is when they're back in the dorm. and and they're tired and they're hungry, and then hear their backstories, and then we have them in. We'll take one at a time, and we'll sort of have.
Do you keep them in like a boot camp scenario the whole time when they're back in the dorms?
Yeah, what I would say was good about the show is they actually have no interaction with anyone. When we start filming for the 14 days, all they see is a DS. So if they need to change their mics, they're hooded. They're hooded and they get changed. They're not allowed to talk to anyone. We don't want to sort of keep them in that bubble. And you don't want to break that bubble at all. So that's one that's quite unique. But it's like a Big Brother scene. So when they're on the base, there are cameras everywhere. And then it's when you start seeing the friction between some of the contestants, and then we have like it's like an interrogation room. It's very similar to this actually. We have a mirror behind us with his cameras, and we have the person there, and then they're tired and they're hungry, and when we start talking, asking them questions, and we may bring stuff up on social media from their past, and then and then they start breaking down really, and that's what people have. So it's a reality TV show. I enjoyed doing it. It was a good experience, and it was my first exposure to TV, which then worked perfectly on for the next one.
I was researching the TV show, and you started with 17 people. 10 people voluntarily withdrawn, which is quitting, right?
Yeah, VW.
Some of the people that voluntarily withdrew: Olympic swimmer, Olympic diver, an actor, a rugby player, a comedian, a singer / actor, and a model. People are a little, okay, I get a singer, an actor, or comedian, whatever, but Olympic swimmer, I mean, that person has definitely put in some work. And Olympic diver, anyone that's a rugby player. Yeah. So were you surprised when people would quit?
Yeah, it's interesting to see what people's breaking points are. I actually talk about, I do a lot in the fitness area, and I call it clean PT and dirty PT. So a lot of these, everyone thinks there's a lot of synergy and crossover between professional sports people and the special forces community. Yes, there is certain crossovers. There's actually a lot of differences as well. So here in the US, you have a professional footballer. He has to play 60 minutes. Yeah, that's right, 60 minutes. It's easy, 60 minutes. So he basically knows that all I need to do today is perform for 60 minutes. On the build up to that, he's having a good diet. Mm-hmm. He's when he finishes that game, he's going to have a good shower. He's going to have physio,
probably massage.
His calorific intake's going to be on point. Everyone's monitoring his diet. His motivations are money, the crowd, and things like that. Take him into a special forces environment. You got no one cheering you on. You don't know when
it's going to end.
When it's going to end. Mm-hmm. Your calorific intake is low. Your sleep deprivation is low, and so there's a lot of differences between the special forces community. A special forces guy can quite happily go into professional sports people's environment. It's very difficult going the other way around. So I call it the clean PT and dirty PT, and there's a whole book in itself probably on that. Yeah.
And you also had some people medically withdrawn. There's another term that's in that show. It's called cold. Cold. Like you call like weak animals.
Yeah.
So are these people that you guys got rid of, like you're allowed to say you're out?
Yeah, I think they let the students choose as well. Sometimes we play mind tricks, and then it's like, right, we'll pull them in and say, right, who do you think is the weakest person? Because we will only see a certain amount. We won't see what's happening on behind closed doors. I remember once when I was an instructor on the commando course, we had a guy and we gave him the commando medal. We thought this guy was, some of the students came up to us after and said, that guy was useless. When you weren't there, we call them DS watchers. Mm-hmm. When you're there, they're performing. And so that's why we give them an opportunity. It's like, right, you tell us or who do you think shouldn't be here and why? And they may see something we haven't seen, which is quite good. We do it on our special forces selection. We have the jungle phase, which is 6 weeks. 4 weeks in the jungle, and so naturally, there's people that don't get on well with each other. So you may have a rub-in with your DS and you might not see eye to eye. But what they then do is they make sure they swap instructor for the final week, for the final missions, and because if there is any of that sort of relationship breaking down, it gives him an opportunity to say, right, yeah, I agree, or actually I disagree as well.
Yeah, and the Rangers do this. And they actually have incorporated some of this into SEAL training now, where you force rank everyone in your class.
Okay.
Where they say, yep, there's 20 guys left in our class right now. Here's the number 1 guy and here's the number 20 guy. And they're looking at it. They don't make any hardcore decisions. It's not like, oh, Echo's the bottom guy and everyone thinks Echo's the bottom guy. We're getting rid of him. But it just allows a little bit more, like you said, for the instructors to go, oh, okay. So, and there's going to be some kind of a trend. If there's some kind of a trend.
Yeah.
Because look, like, oh yeah, I don't like Echo, but you like Echo. And it kind of all comes out in the wash. That's all good. But if there's everyone hates Echo, it's like, maybe we should pay attention to Echo. So it just gives a little bit of awareness to the instructors. But I know in Ranger School, American Ranger School, you can peer someone out. So if all of us don't like Echo, we're like, hey, put Echo as the bottom. If we all get along, today Echo's going to be the bottom guy, because you have to force rank them all the time, regularly. And then tomorrow I'll be, hey, everyone rank me at the bottom, and then we rank you at the bottom the day after that. So that way we all stay because we're taking care of each other. But it's really easy. I think it's called peering someone out. You can peer someone out in Ranger School. So it sounds like you could peer someone out in the SAS TV program.
And yeah, we could peer someone out, and you know, there's some that literally, especially when we know what's coming, it's like, you know, you're on your last legs. Actually, you've performed well, you know, leave now. But they would either voluntarily withdraw, or we may get to a stage actually like we've got too many. So, which is why I say it's almost like a reality TV show. There's an element of it's the truth, but actually, you know, and they're screaming and shouting at them. You know, our special forces selection, no one shouts at you. Yeah. No one needs to shout at you. So you know, but again, it's that authenticity and entertainment needle.
Yeah, that's what's interesting about SEAL training is there's some guys would yell and scream at you, and some guys wouldn't. The guys that wouldn't scream at you were way more horrible and sadistic. You know, the guy that would just walk over and be like, go ahead and get down on the ground. You're like, oh no. The guy that's you're like, okay, cool, you're gonna yell at me, but it's all good. And some people would be intimidated by that, some people wouldn't. But the guy that just comes over and goes, hey, I need to talk to you, you're like, damn, this is gonna hurt. And the people that passed, I guess, this thing, where you had a motorsports presenter, a rugby player, and a women's rugby player.
Women's rugby player, yeah.
Bro, women's rugby is they don't change any rules. It's just on. Where I live, they play women's rugby sometimes out in the fields, and you drive by there, dude, they get after it. And man rugby, of course, right? Like did you play rugby?
I played rugby, yeah.
Bro, I went to a rugby game, and look, I get it. I'm a little bit more mature right now than I used to be in terms of age. But I watched that game. I'm like, dude, every interaction, I was cringing, thinking, oh, ACL, PCL. Like, it just is gnarly.
It's gnarly. We're not allowed to play sports in the Special Forces because there's so many injuries anyway. They can't afford to then you guys having sports injuries. But there's dispensation. There's one rugby match a year, and it's the SAS versus the SBS.
Oh, you must just murder each other.
Oh, my God, yeah. And it's literally, we have a thing called...
What's it called? Did you say dispensation?
Dispensation is basically it's being green lit from direct to Special Forces. And these guys can play one game together. And we have a thing called the Oracle, where both units come together in December, and we spend a week together. Anyone who's not on operations or deployments will be at the Oracle, and you talk about operations throughout the year with the units, lessons learned, the future of the Special Forces. Everyone is in there, and then we have the rugby match. But the England rugby team train the guys, you know, the two teams over the next sort of 2 weeks, and they fly you in from wherever you are in the world. If you're a rugby player, you're playing. I remember literally passing selection about 2 days before, and you're on the team, and it is gnarly. Oh yeah, guys, stitches in their eyes. I remember one of the sergeant majors swallowed his tongue. But it got to the point where I remember one year going to Hereford, and these two big Fijians were coming off this helicopter, and I'm like, "You're not in the Special Forces." But what they were doing, there was anyone attached to the Special Forces were coming in. So in the end, we decided, no, you have to be badged. And the origins of that game came from 2003. They had the Australia Rugby World Cup, and the SAS had sent a team over, the British SAS. The SBS sent a team over. The Australian SAS had a team, New Zealand SAS, and the South Africans. Ooh. And they went and had a rugby tour around. Sick. Yeah, and then what they did, they continued that tradition that the SAS and SBS would play every year.
Who won the big one with all five?
I actually don't know who won that one. No, I don't know. I'll find out though.
Because I mean, New Zealand's full on.
Oh,
It seems like they would have an advantage, right?
Yeah, them and the Aussies. The Aussies. I actually thought the Australians, like rugby was their biggest one. Actually, you've got cricket and I don't even seen Australian rules football.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's gnarly as
that's
well.
Another
Yeah, that's another gnarly one. So actually, and then they have rugby league, rugby unions like their third or fourth sport. But as you're right, the All Blacks, the Kiwis,
Yeah.
they're literally born with a rugby ball in their hands.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
We got a guy working at Origin right now, Leo. He's from New Zealand and he played rugby, like pro rugby, all day. I was just saying that the people that won was like a motorsports presenter, a rugby player, and a women's rugby player. Did you, as you're watching this stuff, because you were an instructor in selection, and you get to learn about people, see their breaking point.
Yeah.
What similarities or differences did you see with these civilians?
I think for me was their motivations. I always find on selection, what is your motivation for being on selection? I don't know what it's like here in the US, but I know there's some guys, when I went on selection, there was guys there who literally from the age of 5 or 6 always wanted to be a Royal Marine or parachute regiment and go SAS or SBS. That's literally their lifelong dream. I actually fell into the military by accident and ended up in this position by accident. So I never put myself under that self-induced pressure. But these guys would go on, and some of them would only go on because their dad or their brothers were in, and they didn't have any other choice. Which I don't think is the right motivation, because when it's hard, as you need to dig deep. And so for me, these guys, some of them when they failed, and that's literally what they've always wanted to do all their life, they would end up leaving the military. So for me, it was the motivations. Some people were either to prove themselves or to their families, and these contestants that we had, they all had different backstories. Some of them were heartbreaking. There was I think it was the diver, the girl, and she was a ninja. She literally she got, in the end we did break her in the end. She voluntarily withdrew, but I didn't think she was going to stop. But her sister committed suicide, and you didn't hear about that until you had her in the interview room and things like that. And so she was doing it for her sister, and, and some of them.
What made her quit?
She just couldn't keep up with the pace in the end. But in fact, we had a MIB, the medium inflatable boats, and they were pushing them above her head. And I remember they dropped it on her head, and so I think she had a bit of an injury. And then she also had, she was still a professional diver. She had competitions coming up as well. Had a pro boxer in there who did his shoulder, and it's like there's an element of this is just a TV show. I do have a career outside of here. So for me, it was more their motivations. But the female rugby girl you touched on, then she was strong. Honestly, she was stronger than the guys, and I used to always wind the guys up. You know what I mean? But whatever their motivations were. But again, there were, as you know, it's 80% mental, 20% physical, and it was good to see that sort of crossover.
Yeah, one thing, the guy that has wanted to be a SEAL his whole life, and some other guy that just my ex-girlfriend said I couldn't make it, and you don't know which one of those guys is going to make it, because somebody's just like, my dad thinks I'm a loser, I'm going to be a SEAL, and that's enough for him. Someone else is like, their grandfather ran out on the family and he's going to make it to prove him wrong. It just really, do you actually want to do that job? If you really want to make it, for whatever that freaking reason is, like some people, you need to be patriotic, you need to be doing it for selfless sacrifice and service and all that. Some dude's like, no, dude, my girlfriend dumped me for a SEAL when I was 20, and now I'm going to go be one. That's the kind of stuff you can't tell. You can't tell what's gonna get someone through and how far they're going to make it. Only they know. Yeah,
and also where they've come from as well. A lot of them come from humble beginnings. I remember.
It's true, but for me, it's the same. The people that I've seen, you'll have a guy. I knew guys in the SEAL teams that were from $1 billion families, $1 billion families in the SEAL teams. And of course, I knew guys that grew up in foster care, in foster homes, and never had 2 nickels to rub together. And so both those ends of the spectrum, you would get guys that would make it. You'd also get guys from both those ends of the spectrum that wouldn't make it.
Yeah.
So I always say there's no rhyme or reason, but sorry, I cut you off.
No, we had a it reminded me of an officer we had in 5'9" Commando, Camel Calhoun, I think his name was, again, from money. And he would donate, for the love of the job, he would donate his wages to charity every month. And we were like, what about charity starts here? The guys are all skint. But no, I think you're right. There's those who, some come from humble beginnings and some literally that's all they've wanted to do, or they wanted to test themselves. Like, for me, I only joined the army because my father told me the last 2 minutes. I then never looked back. I always wanted to be a fireman. I didn't want to be in the military. So yeah, people have different motivations and end up on that finishing line.
Crazy. So now you went from that TV show, and so when did you get done filming that one?
So we were filming that in September, October of 2021, and then it aired in something like January, February 2022.
So when did this next TV show come together?
So when I was doing the bike ride, and you mentioned Prince Harry earlier, Prince Harry and I did a promo video together at Kensington Palace to really sort of promote the bike ride. And there was a woman there, Ashley, who was with that production company. She now works with another production company called Emporium. And they have a show on Netflix called Inside World's Toughest Prisons, where a guy goes around the world and he's an ex-convict himself, and he goes into all these prisons and he sees the differences. And I think that's on like season 7. So they were then wanted to do something about the forces. And so she always remembered me from that interview with Harry. And so she reached out to me and to Alana about 3 years ago. And it was just before I'd started filming SAS Australia. And she said, look, we're looking at doing this show. Do you think Dean would be interested? Can we put his name in the hat? And Alana said, yeah, of course. And we didn't hear anything of it. So then Mum's passed, and then we got a phone call, and she said, look, Dean's gone from 150 candidates in the UK down to 1. And I was like, well, that doesn't make any sense, because I've only just finished filming SAS Australia, so why would they choose me? And there was some big names in there from the UK in the military community, and they said, oh no, he looks like he's one of the fittest. And I was like, so what is the concept of the show? And I thought, am I doing selection 8 times over? And so they presented my name to Netflix. They said, this is our host. And Netflix came back and said, we were thinking more of an American because it's Netflix Hollywood. And so I was then told that I had to fly to Dallas in November 21, which is great timing because I just finished filming in Australia. And so I was actually now quite comfortable in the camera. And I flew out to Dallas, and I met 4 other, two Navy SEALs there. One was Ryan Bates, him and his pal. Actually, it's his pal they approached originally, and he asked Ryan to come along, which is... there was a Green Beret and a Marine Raider, I think it was, a Marine Raider guy. And so we went out and we were doing a bit of go-ruck, a bit of PT, having a barbecue, and it's basically all about chemistry. See how you guys get on. And then so when I came back, Emporium like, what's your thoughts, Dean? And Ryan and I sort of really hit off. I said, Ryan seems to be cool. So then it was Ryan. Ryan was then selected, and we were going to have 2 hosts. And then right at the 11th hour, so you talk about Top Gear, the commissioner for the show commissioned Top Gear back in 2005, and he said 2 hosts doesn't work. We need a full guy. You need a 3rd person. So right in 11th hour, they're like, right. So we found these 2 guys. They're 2 YouTubers. And one of them was a guy called Cameron, who's a ranger. He did 4 years and got out. But his YouTube channels are based on military equipment. And he reviews of stuff and so this guy's quite confident. For me and Ryan, we're all old dogs, veterans, and you stick a camera in front of us and we start turning away from it. This guy is very confident in front of the camera. He's got a nose ring in and everything. I'm like, is this for Pop Idol or is this for toughest forces on earth? But actually, he was really good. And so I didn't really understand how the dynamics would work. But then actually, when we started filming, I get it, and I think it was a good decision to go from 1, 2 to the 3.
Yeah. And so you guys, and Ryan I knew him from the teams, and he's just a freaking outstanding dude. And you guys end up traveling. So the theory of the show is it's sort of like the inside the prison thing, but you're going to go inside of, for lack of a better way of saying it, various special operations units from different countries around the world. Yeah,
that's it. Basically, we go to 8 countries around the world. We visit 8 special forces units, and we showcase what's unique about that unit, whether it's geographically where they're placed, what the threats are to them as a nation, or just the environment that they operate in. You know, we did everything from the Arctic to the desert to the jungle, and I call it Top Gear with guns. You know, we can't call it Top Guns because that's already gone. But that's pretty much the concept. And we go to these countries and we get immersed in their training. We do training with them for a week, and then they showcase, you know, all the different things that they do, and then we then do a mission profile at the end, a final mission. And so for me, the reason I wanted to do it was because I had an intrigue about other military. When I was in, I knew about the SEALs, I knew about Delta Force, the SAS and the SPS, you know, and maybe a couple of other units. I wasn't aware about all these special forces units around the world, and also the influence that the UK and US have had on all of them. You know, when you go there and you're training with them, you're like, these TTBs aren't far from ours. You know, like when we went to Philippines, the NAVSOM group there. No, Ryan spent a year with them.
Yeah,
when
I was
he
going to
in the
say
SEALs.
we've been training them since Nam. You know, since we left Vietnam, we've been training the Filipinos.
Yeah, we went out to Colombia, the Hunglar police, and their crest has got the unicorn and the lion, which is very British. And it turns out the SAS were the first ones to go out. So that's what I was interested in, and also, you know, for me personally, my kids think I'm stolen valor, I think, you know, or a Walter Mitty, because they were all born post-military, and like Dad wasn't in the military. So for me, it was more to showcase to them, and personally, you know, I got injured out in 2011. You know, what is the skill fade? Do I still have it? And so that was cool for me.
How'd you feel?
Feel strong, yeah. I feel strong, and you know, as you see on the show, you know, and I'm very competitive, so I wouldn't let Ryan and Cameron beat me on anything physical. You know, even if it killed me off camera, I was like, clip. Yeah. But for me, again, it's you know, I was proper rubbing, banging heads with the production, because I now understand production, and they're like, yeah, but we don't really need to do that. We can cut that, and I'm thinking like, no, it needs to be done correctly. I said, I don't care what 99.99% of the world see. I'm worried about what 30 of my best friends from my unit see, because they are watching this with a sniper's eye and a scope on top of that. I've watched a couple episodes to check it out, and
so Ryan was like he's younger than me. He's probably like he's younger than me, but I remember when
he's 42 now.
Yeah, when so I'm 10 years older than him. Okay. So when I retired, I was like, you know, I'd look at the teams, you know, and you think I was all stoked that a guy like Ryan was in there, and then he ended up getting out, and I had a tear in my non-shooting eye when he got out, because it was going to hurt. So you guys went to Jordan.
Yes.
That's where you kicked it off, I guess. Is that where you started? Out there in the desert, and you know what's crazy is you had to find these guys, and you had thermal, and that just is such a game changer, man.
Oh yeah,
it's just not fair anymore.
It's not fair anymore. Like you said, the first thing was a hunter force, me to chase down Cameron and Ryan, and what really surprised me about this show, you know, I got out in 2011. I mean, Ryan wasn't long after me, but the advance in technology in such a short period of time, you know, one of my biggest surprises was the weight of the body armor. I'm like, I remember you remember first generation kit. Now it's just, I'm like, is this a training one, or is this a swimmer's one? He said, no, this is actually full ballistic. I'm like, oh my word. And that was a great thing about Cameron, because me and Ryan, you know, I used to joke that when I was in tier 1, I'd just get like the signalers to dress me and just go out the door. And he was like, you know, he would show us about all this new equipment, and he was fully versed with all. So that was a big surprise for me. But the show, the first episode they aired was Jordan. The first episode we filmed was actually USA, which is number 8.
Okay.
And what was unique about that is Alana gave birth to my daughter 24 hours before I went and filmed the first episode, which was hard, because you know, when you're in the units and you have to deploy, you know, and we literally, you know, we couldn't move the show, because we weren't working on productions time, we were working on these units time, and these units have, you know, they're still got their other training and their operations. They literally had to fit us in, so we didn't have any fudge in the system. And so she gave birth to Harley, and then 12 hours later I was on a flight over to Destin.
Damn.
Yeah, for 2 weeks.
And what's the filming schedule like when you're out there? So you spend a week doing training and then another week doing like the full mission profiles and stuff?
No, so it tends to be about 7 to 10 days filming. Normally a day of setting up, then we meet the guys, and then we just do all the various training exercises. I mean, it tends to be about the full mission profiles on about 2 days long. So it varied from country to country. You know, like Jordan, we had a bit more time. Whereas Sweden, you know, and that was the thing that was tough about this show. People say what was tough for me. There wasn't anything that I did particularly that I thought was tough, because a lot of the stuff, everything I'd done before, apart from the swamp survival in Malaysia. I've never seen anything like that. But you're going from, we were filming in Sweden in minus 30, doing a SEER course up there, and then coming back to the US. And then a week later, you're in Colombia in plus 27, plus 30 degrees in the jungle. So it wasn't so much what we were doing; it was the impact and the effect it was having on the bodies. You know, I think Ryan and Cameron, they got DMV, diarrhea and vomiting 4 times in the different countries. And so yeah, that was tough. And then also understanding production, understanding us, and us understanding production. You know, for me, I was just stoic. I just did everything I did. The way I carried myself, I just wanted to make sure, you know, I was doing it correctly. Because for me, you know, it was really good balance, because you have Ryan and Cameron flying the US flag, and there's me on my own flying the UK flag. So there's that that competition but camaraderie as well. So it was fun. It's like being back in the teams. Yeah, and the banter as well. And Ryan, I just don't think Ryan has an off button. He just thought it was and in fairness to Ryan, I think the last thing the showrunner used to say was, remember, be funny. And I'm like, what, we're doing a comedy? You know, I used to like joke, but Ryan would play on it. He would love it, yeah. and it is a really good balance between the three. I'm like the grumpy Jeremy Clarkson, who's like, I'm just giving you the details, and this is why we do it. And then there's Ryan clowning around, and then there's Cameron, who's just like, yay, you know.
Was there any like crazy mishaps or anything?
No real crazy.
That's good. I mean, because I was watching it, and you know, anytime you're doing fast roping, anytime you're doing patrolling, anytime you're driving vehicles, you get knuckleheads driving vehicles, which we're all knuckleheads. I'm like, oh, how fast can this thing go? Let's find out. So I was thinking, man, if they made it through whatever it is, 8 different groups and didn't like hurt anybody, I'd be pretty impressed.
We had a few injuries. You know, Ryan tore his bicep in the Philippines. I'd like to say it was something sexy. It was playing basketball, which is their favorite sport. You know, I dislocated my thumb in the killing house in Austria. You know, you fall over, and then I did the spy rig. You know what's interesting. You know the nature of the job is dangerous anyway. You know, we in the SBS we used to have more fatalities and injuries in training than actually on operations. If you train for real, but for me, you know, I'd done that before, which is fine. But then you're going to some of these countries where their health and safety standards aren't the same as ours.
Bro, I saw like a trailer, and it's one of those things where you're basically shooting, or it's a shooting drill, and it looked like they're shooting
live fire
at each other.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, that was in Malaysia with the GGK. I remember the showrunner came over and he said, "Oh, Dean, apparently these guys, the SAS taught them this." And I was like, "Really?" But it was back in the 70s. The SAS used to do that as a training exercise, and then they've obviously gone out, you know, because the GGK is the Green Berets, so they worked a lot with the Royal Marines. That's how they built their recognition. And so yeah, it would actually stem from the UK. I was like, really? I said, I've not done that before. But yeah, these guys were, as a confidence test, would fire, and they'd hold paddles next to their head or between their legs, and so I think that was the only one we decided that we weren't going to do of all the exercises. But yeah, we you know, I dislocated my shoulder on the spy rig, and there's nothing I could do. I had the GoPro in one hand, but then the only reason for that is because, you know, the Malaysians are about 4'2", you know, their tallest guy, and so you're in a harness on this thing, and so yeah, there were injuries along the way, but yeah, as you say, we had a little bit of downtime. Yeah,
being in the military is very abusive on your body. I mean, you're just doing stuff all the time. Whether I remember I was a new guy, and we were doing shipboarding from helos, right? So we're doing fast ropes.
Yeah,
and I'm a radio man. And so I got my body armor on, and I got my radio on. And at this time, you did not put your feet on the rope. It was like, if you put your feet on the rope, you were a coward. And so what no one told me is don't put your feet on the rope unless you're a radio man and you have an extra 30 pounds. So I would just come out and just basically fall 30 feet to the deck of the ship, fall down, get up, and go set security. Yeah. So stupid, so dumb. And eventually people realized, hey, you're no good if you fast rope onto the ship and hit the ground and freaking blow your knee out. You can't do the assault. So, yeah, we do some dumb stuff. And just, like I said, you do enough fast ropes, you do enough rappels, you do enough jumps, you do enough whatever, hooking climbs, just everything that we do, running through the desert, night vision, carrying a down guy, rough terrain, like you're gonna have injuries. Yeah. And that's why for you guys to do all that and get relatively minor injuries is pretty impressive.
Yeah, well, it was. Yeah, we put our bodies through it. But like I said, I think the toll was just those different environments. But funny you say that. When you look at the Malaysia one, I fast rope in with my legs open because that's the way I was taught. And so, and Ryan's like showing off as that. But no, when we did it, we had our legs open because we had to see between them. And so. But yeah, again, but we also had military advisors from each of the, they were also watching as well because they want to be coming across quite well. Right. Because what I think is great about this show, remember the first episode we filmed, its last episode, was US Navy EOD. And the guy called Craig Jungers, he was like the training officer. And I remember when we turned up, they were quite nervous because they were basically told you're doing this. I think other than Top Gun, this is probably hopefully their biggest recruitment thing. So they were nervous. Guys weren't unsure. They also didn't have anything to reference from because it's the first season. Yeah. So what is it you guys are trying to do? Because we did it. We had other countries lined up like Japan, Brazil, Greece, and Japan thought we were going to potentially make them look bad, and that wasn't the purpose of the show. But like I said, the US Navy took the risk and the gamble, and they loved it, and it's paid off for them. So recruitment's at an all-time low around the world, apart from the US Marine Corps, I think, still hitting their numbers. And so for me, if we have a season 2, I said to Greg, I think you guys, you took a risk, took a gamble, it's paid off. If we have a season 2, the US Army, Air Force, everyone's going to be knocking on the doors because this is a great recruitment platform for them. Yeah,
EOD is a relatively unknown entity in the US Navy, and especially the part of the EOD that comes and works with special operations. Yeah. I mean, the EOD guys that we had that come to the SEAL teams, like they go through your whole workup with you. They're in the train and they're on the assaults. They're doing everything.
Yeah, they're swimming.
Yeah, they're doing everything. So it's a pretty awesome job, but it's relatively unknown, and it's also, I mean, a job where you're walking up to bombs and disarming them. It's sketch in many cases.
I interviewed Craig afterwards. I did some interviews with him on a podcast, and he was explaining to me that actually, and you don't really think about it, they have to defuse everything from a grenade to a nuclear weapon and everything in between, and whether that's on land or underwater. And I'm like, oh my God. So actually, I think he was telling me from the time you step into the recruitment office or you're going through, it's 4 years before you're even in the team. That's probably the longest process I've ever heard.
That might be the longest.
Yeah, it's not
because the Air Force, American Air Force special operations guys, their school is really long, but it's kind of spaced out where you go to like this training and you make it through that, and then you're kind of waiting around for the next school to start up, and then you go through that, and then you wait for the next school to start up. So there's a lot of start and stop. I don't know if EOD is like that or not. The SEAL pipeline is just like you're in it, and you're just going to go, and you can't get rolled back, which I guess can hold you up. So in the midst of all this kind of newfound this television type stuff, you also went down the path of the plant medicine thing. Yeah. How'd that come about?
So that sort of came about by accident. With my bike ride, when I did the bike ride, we did it for a mental health campaign. And it wasn't just veteran mental health. It was everything for like the whole society, postnatal depression, young children, teenagers. And so when when Harry would ask if I would do it for mental health, I all of a sudden became a mental health advocate. And because of the success of that, we raised over $1 million for the charities. I was always banging on the message about physical activity helps your mental state. I didn't really know much about the mental health space, but because of the success of that, the world records and everything we did, I ended up becoming this mental health ambassador, especially for the veteran community. So when we came over here, Alana, my wife, she wrote a book called How to Ask for Money. She's not scared in asking for money. And the reason for that is, you know, and the way best to explain it, she helps a lot of veterans on their transition, because we come from an environment where, you know, when we were planning operations in Afghan or Iraq, and you need 2 Black Hawks, you need a Spectre gunship, you need UAV, you need fast air, you need 30 guys. No one gives you a bill in the military. You know, it's $1 million operations automatically done for you. So you spent your career doing that, and then you then entered the world of corporate, which is totally alien to us. And so for me, I never used to feel comfortable talking about money. So Alana would always do the contracts. And because also as well with some of the...
You were obviously not very clear about it, because you did that evacuation in Libya for $7,000.
Yeah.
Bruh. You should have had her run the invoices on that one.
Oh yeah, she still makes me suffer for that. But the thing is, I you know, from our background, I don't see a price on the person's head. I don't see the value of that. Ilana comes from a corporate world, and she's like, no, you know, there is a price. Because the problem is, if you say, right, this is the price, and then you actually go do it, you know, it's after the fact they're like, well, you know, I probably don't want to pay that. So she sort of takes all that away from me. So she deals with all the contracts. I never deal with, you know, with clients on that. But with How to Ask for Money, you know, on my bike ride, I'd never cycled more than 20 miles before I applied for the world record. She got me £500,000 sponsorship for that challenge, and you know, I mean, raised over $1 million along the way. And so she has her own formula. It's called MAPS. She understands it. You know,
what's MAP stand for?
Oh, I'll have to get her on
we'll
for that. I don't know that one, but but basically, whether it's in non-profit or whether it's in corporate, it's all about the mindset and the approach and stuff. And so, because of the success of that, and she also now got honoured the MBE from King Charles last year for her services to vulnerable women in human trafficking, and also mental health awareness because of the money that she's raised. So that sort of really given her that credibility. And for me, I think I was more happier than herself, more prouder than herself, because everyone sees me doing the stuff, and I always say that, you know, she's working behind the scenes. So for me, that she'd been recognized for all that hard work that she does do. So going back to your question about the plant medicine, she now works with some of the non-profits in helping them, working with their development directors and helping them achieve their targets for the year. So, you know, she helps them, trains them for 12 months, hits their targets, and lets them go off on their own. So one of them approached her called Heroic Hearts. They heard about me, Heroic Hearts UK. They heard that I was in the US, and they said, look, you know, you guys are big in the mental health and the veteran space. Would you want to come on board and assist us? And so for me, I didn't know anything about plant medicine. You know, I've never even taken any recreational drugs in my life, never smoked before in my life at all. And so we were looking at doing ayahuasca last year.
You're just going right in for it.
Yeah. So looking at doing ayahuasca last year.
Like, did you feel, what was driving you to feel like you needed to do that?
Yeah, so having had some conversations with people, I'm very fortunate. I don't have PTSD. I don't have any addictions. But now and then, I would always see this red mist. It just maybe 2 or 3 times a year, just out of nowhere. And where it would happen would be like, for example, if I'm in Israel or Afghanistan or Libya, Somalia, Yemen, all these places, I'm more comfortable in a crisis or in those situations. It's when I come back to the Western world and people are arguing about the smallest of things, the niff-naff and trivia, or people beeping their horns at me. That's when I see red. There was an incident back in Scotland. I was dropping my daughter off in nursery, and I was pulling out, and the guy behind me was just banging his horn. And so I just got out and I just pulled him through the window. And then all of a sudden, the red mist, and there's nothing you can do to intervene. And then the red mist lifted, and I was just like, apologize. It just come from nowhere. I don't know where. There was something underlying. And so Alana used to always mention this to me. So for me as well, is I've been banging the drum about physical activity. You know, I've been going to some of these conferences as well on the stage. And for me, I wanted to almost at least try it to then at least have a foot at the table or a seat at the table to then explain, you know, my experiences and how it can benefit people. So yeah, I was asked to do ayahuasca, but with ayahuasca, you have to, there's a build up phase to it as well. You know, you need to be coming off caffeine and all these other stuff. If you're on any medications, coming off that. And then you have the process, which can be between 6 and 8 days. And then you have the integration. Well, for me, last year when we were filming, there was no way I could find a week in the calendar. But also the production company got wind. You know, Ryan and I were chatting about it, and Cameron, you know, 'cause it's quite, you know, prevalent. Everyone talks about it here on this side of the world. And one of the production got wind of it, and they rang Alana and said, look, you know, Dean's doing illegal drugs. And Alana's like, yeah, he hasn't done anything. But again, UK, you know, marijuana is illegal, so for them, don't really understand it. So I put it aside. I said, look, you know, I'm not going to do it. I'll address it later. So Alana and I have a podcast called Behind the Scene, and it's a play on words, SWEN. So we get people on board, you know, people that the world sees, and then we bring their partners on, you know, and, you know, talk about the success stories and how you can both have a relationship together and still be successful. And unfortunately, a lot of women have to put their careers on hold, you know, to have a family. And then there can be resentment where the husband's been successful and they're not. So we sort of showcase that. But we had a couple on called Marcus and Amber Capone.
Yeah.
You know Marcus.
Yeah, I've had both. They were on this podcast
Yeah,
as well.
who run the Vet Solution.
Right.
So I remember we were interviewing him, and Amber talks about how Marcus had tried ayahuasca, this psilocybin, and none of it was working. And she found out about ibogaine. So the difference in ibogaine and ayahuasca, the ayahuasca is like the grandmother of the plant medicine. The ibogaine is the grandfather, it's the masculine one. So he went away, and it's over a weekend. It's not done, you know, over a period of a week. He went away, came back on the Monday, and she knew straight away that he was back to the guy that she fell in love with, and she started crying.
Wait, which one was it from?
Ibogaine.
From
the Ibogaine.
And wait, the Ibogaine is the masculine one?
Is the masculine one, yeah.
And ayahuasca
is the grandmother. The Ibogaine's the
got
grandfather.
Got it. Okay.
So I was like, my ears pricked up. Alana's already kicking my ankle, and I'm like, okay. And so for me, again, you know, I'm not a spiritual person. You know, I don't listen to podcasts and things like that, and I like to make my own decision. But I recognized, you know, I respected Marcus and what he'd done. And so when I finished filming Heroic Hearts, who Alana was now helping fundraise for, Jesse Gould, who's the CEO, he said, look, I hear Ibogaine's probably more suited for you. And I said, yeah, it is, you know, just purely because I can only afford a weekend off. And so he said, look, we have these 4 weekends coming up. And one of them was literally, this was on the Friday, one of them was the following Friday. And I said, just lock me in. And I was like, okay. On the Saturday, Alana and I were at Coronado Island with Marcus and Amber for their vets conference that they had down there. And I was on the table with DJ Shipley, another SEAL guy. And I had questions, and I was asking, they'd done Ibogaine. I was asking them questions. You know, for me, it's like, you know, I when I'm doing challenges, you know, I like to go into a dark place and use that energy and, you know, and do it physically. I said, will I come back and not be able to do one pull-up? And they're like, no, it cleans you out completely. And so they were answering questions that I was asking. And I then went the following Friday. Alana dropped me off at the San Juan Capistrano train station. And even on the way there, I was like, I'm only doing this for you and the kids. I could see what I was doing. I was like, I'm not doing this for you. You know, for me, I'm doing it for you and the kids. And she knew what was happening. But she sent me down there. We then went across the border into Mexico. And the difference between ayahuasca is very spiritual. It's in the environments, in the jungles and stuff, and you drink it. Ibogaine's clinical. You take 2 pills. You have an old EMT team there. You have doctors. They put intravenous into you. You have mercury to surround your heart because your heart slows down that much. It's so powerful. It's the most powerful psychedelic out there. So I went in with no expectations at all.
Did you ever smoke pot before?
Never done anything. Never even smoked before in my life, literally. And
this is what it would be like for me because I've never done that. And I've never used.
And everyone said this is typical you, Dean. You've just literally gone in at the deep end. But and this is the first time I've talked about this publicly. And one of the gentlemen on the table with DJ with me, you know, he said to me, there's a thing called about leaning in. You've got to really lean into it. You're going to see fears, but he says it's the same with going through the door in Afghan and Iraq. You don't want to go through the door, but you have to go in and get through the other end. So I sort of took all these points on board. I never, again, listened to podcasts, never listen to other people's perceptions and what they got from it, sort of went in blind. And the Ibogaine lasts about 6 to 10 hours. I was in it for 20 hours. I was literally in this state. And for me, I remember starting, you take the pill and you lie in the bed, they put headphones on you, you have an eye mask, and they start playing music. And, I'd never had a bass line before because I'd never done any sort of recreational drugs. And the gentleman next to me starts purging, because you can be sick. You're basically getting rid of some of the badness out of you. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm not in it. I haven't even started. And then all of a sudden, I just saw this spiral tiger coming in and this music playing. And that was me gone for 20 hours. And literally, it's really hard to explain. It's almost like you've been invited to a movie premiere, but you're the only one in the audience because you're the only one who understands the language or what's coming across in front of you. But it took me back to everything, my childhood, being in a homeless home, fighting at a young age, my father getting custody, and it literally was just almost being like kicked in the bollocks 100 times over. Literally all these messages, these are messages you've seen. And so for me, it kept saying, no, try not be the entrepreneur. Alana knows what she's doing, step aside, let her do that. For me, it was about being the protector. And they said, look, we had to, you joined the military, you got certain skills. And I was and you can ask it questions. If you see something, you can ask it, questions.
What's it?
Just what you're seeing. You can ask the medicine what you're seeing. You're like, well, I don't know what it is you're showing me. And then it will maybe show you from another angle. And so for me, it was like, I didn't want to leave the military after 16 years. I got injured out. And then the way it sort of presented it to me was like, you couldn't learn anymore. The skill sets you got, you had enough. And so, but then in the private security sector, look what I've learned from that. And it had everything, all the way to me even seeing Elizabeth checking her phone in Israel. It was power. It was hard to explain, but I came out 8 pounds lighter. But sorry, before that, they had to come to me because that evening we had to then. So I went in on the Friday evening, 7 o'clock on the Saturday evening. They started giving me papaya and banana to get me off the medicine, because at midnight we were then going to have to fast, because the next day we were going to have the DMT, which is the most powerful psychedelic, which is a toad. And like I said, I'd never even smoked before. So even the guy had to teach me how to smoke a pipe. And yeah, that experience, it's not as long as the other. It's like 15 minutes. I remember someone being on Joe Rogan who did it, and he thought he was living under the sea for 6 months and had a family. It's like, it's the closest thing to
Who is that?
I can't remember his name. I remember someone referenced me, but I ended up back in my mother's womb. I could see myself in my mother's womb, and then it felt like I was being born again. So for me, I no reference point, no baseline, but came back almost 8 pounds lighter, and everything was a lot more clearer. You're a bit more present. I was more present with the kids. I was a lot calmer. It's not to say you're not angry and it fixes everything, but it's almost like beforehand it was like a light switch, and I go from 0 to 10 with a switch, whereas this is a dimmer. And so you're aware of it. I mean, you just sort of then bring it back down. But the medicine's only a small part of it. It's all the integration, the stuff you do afterwards. So for me, but Alana picked me up from the train station, and she broke down in tears. She's like, I've got the Dean that I knew from years ago. And so from that point on, we said we would help in the veteran space. I think for me is almost being a conduit, especially to the guys in the UK, but for the special forces community, is that, and I was guilty of it as well. I see sort of like the beads and the hippie stuff around it, and it sort of puts you off, which can be off-putting for the community, but it's actually not like that at all. But the fact that guys are going down to Mexico or Peru with suicide notes and coming back ripping them up, guys that have been on medication for 10 and 12 years and not needing it again, is impactful. And you have lights of Dan Crenshaw, Dr. Huberman, everyone in Stanford, really now trying to push this through the VA. But then on the other side, you have the pharmaceuticals to see the success. And then they're trying. The ibogaine comes from Africa. It's a plant. And they're trying to burn down the forests in Africa.
Literally. Why wouldn't they just turn it, if you have to take it as a pill, why wouldn't they just start making it and selling it and putting it in the pharmacies or the hospitals so you could do it?
Because if it's healing them, there's no financial gain for them. They want to keep you on the medication. That's the thing, that people are going down and they're literally from full-on addictions or being used to have medication to not needing it again.
And you were just like, hey, I'm not addicted to anything. I get mad 3 times a year.
Yeah, but I didn't think I was going to get much from it. I probably gained the most from the group. Again, I was more present. Beforehand, like, I would never be in a room, a conversation with other people. I could never have eye contact. People not that would bore me. I just wouldn't be present. Whereas now, I'm present. This was a bad thing as well. Is people rush back and go back into social media. Social media is a tool, but it can be quite dark. So it's obviously, and I come from an environment where I'm going into places and you're seeing dark things. So it's just that integration again. And so your brain is basically almost like cleared out, and it's neuroplasticity. You're instilling new programs, so get up, whether you want to meditate, whether you want to spend time with your family, it's just, there's lots of things I took away from it. It wasn't so much about the anger thing. It's about being more present with my family, more calmer.
Is this happening in the UK as well? So
no, not at all in the UK. So the UK, they will fly veterans to Peru. But it's interesting what they say is the plant medicine is amazing how many people out there have done it who at the moment it's still as a taboo. So not many people are talking about it. But it's, some of the biggest entrepreneurs in the world, your Musks and things like that, they all do it. We were actually, Alana and I were at a birthday party in Topanga a couple of months ago, a friend's 50th, and she loved all the sound baths. She's very spiritual, and she put us on the table and she said, look, I put you guys on, some of you are Brits, academic wise, you got the same conversation. And I was chatting to someone and she talked about healing, and I said, oh, have you heard of Ibogaine? She goes, oh yeah, I've done it 3 times. And literally everyone on that table, all 10 people had done the plant medicine, but they didn't realize. So for me, it's at its early stages. I know the veteran, the SEAL vets are doing a lot in the SEAL community. Heroic Hearts are doing a lot for the communities as well, and really just trying to push it through and promote it. So I now sit on the board of Heroic Hearts, and I'll keep banging the drum on this. But again, I only did this back in November. I'm still learning, but it just means that I have a seat at the table when I'm chatting with some of these mental health experts. And I actually contradict what I said on the final bit. Is when I talk about physical activity helps your mental state, post plant medicine, the way you best describe it is you're like a pan of water on the stove. And so the physical activity is taking the lid off, to releasing that steam, but you're putting the lid back on. And so it's going to build up again. What the plant medicine does, it takes the pan completely off the stove. That's the biggest difference between them. So I've been banging the drum about physical activity. It still works. It's a short-term fix, but then this is a long-term fix. So whether it's veterans, their spouses, their children, victims of human trafficking, It
seems like I would be very nervous to do this kind of thing. I would not. I have no desire to do this at all. Not that I'm against it, because I know guys personally that it has helped them out a lot. So I'm super stoked for them. Yeah. But it seems like, I'm not there. I'm not there yet.
Yeah, I think for me, what it did for me, answered a lot of questions to the present day. It's literally said, you're on the path that you should be, continue, protect. Whereas some people go in and actually give them the path forward. But it's a scary environment. It's not for everyone. And what I gathered from the time with mental health on the bike ride when I was doing a lot there is actually 75% of veterans, their mental health hasn't got anything to do with the time in the military. It's time prior to that. It's their childhood. It's just trigger points in the military. And so a lot of people here, it's not what they've experienced in the military, it's a lot of their childhood trauma, which some people don't want to see again.
Yeah. And a great example of that is Marcus, because he was, especially when you hear it from his wife, Amber, he was just a totally different person than who she married.
Yeah.
And, he came back. So I know it's definitely helped out a lot of people. I'm not rolling down there to get it done. Ain't happening. So what's next? What do you got on the gamut for the future?
So yeah,
you got something about an ocean row, right?
Yeah, so for me, I like to keep myself physically active. So we obviously work in the human trafficking space, the mental health space. I always try to take a sport that I'd never done before. And we will look at ocean rowing. It's not that popular in the US, but in the UK, it's quite popular. There's a famous race each December called the Talisker Whiskey Atlantic Crossing, and it starts in the Canary Islands and finishes in the Caribbean. And basically, it's a row across the Atlantic, and numerous teams get involved. Four-man teams, two-man teams, four-man, two-man teams, mixed. Some people solo. But last year they had the first one from Monterey to Hawaii. It's a race, it's a good distance, yeah. And so ocean rowing, people will start seeing more here. And
these are just like super high speed rowboats, basically.
So really, the timing of that, they go in December because the tides and the winds are in their favor. But sometimes it doesn't. If you have the winds against you, have a thing called a sea anchor. It's like a parachute. You drop it in, and then the wind pushes you back and stays static. And they're quite big boats as well. They have like 2 cabins. You have your comms kit in one, your navigational stuff, and you have a bed in the other.
How long are they, generally speaking?
Depends if it's 4 or 2 man. Yeah, they're probably I'd say about good 60 feet, 70 feet, 75 feet. Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah, they're big old beasts. Yeah. And so these, so we're looking at a challenge, but for me, it's like, well, what hasn't been done before? And so no one's actually ever rowed the west coast of America. And so the plan is next year, and we're literally just starting now, so looking out for sponsors, for beneficiaries. It's in charities, and the Surf Riders Foundation is one that we'll do it for, because they have stories all the way along that west coast that we can share about. It's going to be about ocean conservation, but we will start in Vancouver and finish in Mexico and Tijuana.
And you sleep on the boat somewhere?
You sleep on the boat. It has cabins in the boat, and it's one of them ones. If the tides and winds are in your favor, you get rowing. But when you're not, you just start rotating between you. But the one with this is it'll be me and Alana. So
she's gonna do it?
Yeah, she's gonna do it with me.
Dang.
So the thing is people. Alana used to get upset with the bike ride because, when I finished it, a great feat, it took 17 days off the wheel record and became the first man in history to do it on 100 days. But a lot of people, because you're from the SF community, it's like, well, of course he is. He's Special Forces. Well, I probably know 99% of SF who wouldn't do that bike ride.
I'm one of them.
Yeah. Whereas Alana got burnt as a child, spilt a kettle on her, boiling water on her chest, and so literally she's had a life of surgeries. When all the other kids were doing sport in school, she had a compression vest for 18 months in hospital. So didn't do that, but academically just shot off. But then she's recently had surgeries which now released her shoulder. So when I'm just taking someone who's never done anything before and trying to prove that with the right mindset, the training and the planning, anything's possible.
What does the training consist of for you and then for her?
So for us, the hardest thing is getting hold of a boat. We've managed to find a boat, and so we need to get that shipped from UK to us. You have the Concept 2 rowers. They're pretty much the best thing is like time in the saddle with cycling. Yep. So just keep doing that. But the hardest thing is getting to the start point. If you get to the start point uninjured with all your equipment, you're 75% of the way there. And so that's what they say is that, just get you to the start point. Hopefully the winds and the tides will be in our favor going from north to south. But we'll also have to do some on-water training as well. So one of our friends, he's the vice president of the Ocean Rowing Society, Chris Martin. So they're the ones who actually... with Guinness Records, they're the ones who sign off on it. So he's going to come out and do a week's training with us on the water, just get us through the routines. Thankfully, I did my yacht masters when I was in the SBS, so I have all the VHF radio stuff and the navigational stuff, but I need to teach Alana on that as well.
How long will it take? I mean, just a rough guess.
I'm anticipating probably about 5 to 6 weeks. If the tides and winds are in our favor.
So you keep the food on there for 5 to 6 weeks, or do you get resupplied?
So where this one's slightly different is normally people have a start point like Monterey and Hawaii. So you don't have a support vessel. No one's coming out to you. Because we're actually going north-south, we don't actually need to be that far off the coastline. We can be about 3 to 5 miles off the coastline, which helps us in certain aspects. We don't need all the safety equipment that these guys have, the rest of the guys have. But actually, navigation is more difficult because there's more shipping lanes to go through. But we can have boats come out and then, maybe drop off some fresh rats. But we would have...
Damn, bring out that Domino's pizza.
Yeah. We would have fresh rations. We could have fresh rations, but we also have Arctic rations as well. But, already chatting with the Surf Riders Foundation, there's stories all along that coastline that we can tell.
So when you say stories along the coastline, you mean like, oh, you're going to go by Dana Point and be like, oh, this used to be a great surf spot, and then they built this freaking stupid whatever marina there, and they wrecked a freaking great surf spot.
Yeah,
that kind of thing.
All those sort of stories there, and obviously pollution in the water. I'll leave that to them. I'll do the rowing, and they can give us the stories.
Yeah, that's legit. There's two guys brothers that paddled prone paddling from Canada to Mexico.
Wow.
But what they were doing was like they would paddle and come in every night and set up camp for a little while and then go back out whenever they were ready, and they did that whole thing just prone paddling.
Wow. How long did that take them?
I forget how long it took, but it was pretty impressive.
Yeah.
And they're on little paddle boards. I mean, those things are like 12 feet maybe. They're maybe 14 feet for the ones that they used. But they had it so loaded down with gear to camp at night. Man, it was pretty impressive.
Yeah. It was impressive.
They made a little movie about it to make it work. Now you got going on right now. You got this podcast Behind the Scene. Do you only interview basically partner like couples scenarios, or
no? We did the first season.
You do me and Echo. Like, Echo's behind the scene. Talk about all his extravagant efforts to make everything happen.
We'll get you guys on definitely. The concept came from it. I think in our special forces, and I think it's the same ratio here. Is for every SF operator to go on the ground, it takes 7 other people you don't see. So it's really about promoting the team behind the scene, and that was the play on words. So we did one season of 10 guests, and it was more couples. But actually, behind the scene, we now can talk. So the second season, I've actually now interviewed the major generals and the commanders of the units that we visited, because the show's great. But as you've seen a couple of episodes, what it doesn't tell me is about the unit. Who are they? What are their origins? Why were they formed? What is their selection process like? So behind the scene can either be successful couples, or it could be what's actually happening on the ground. Israel, for example. What are we seeing? But actually, what is going on behind the scenes? So it's a play on words, and each season will be very different. Sometimes it may just be me and Alana chatting. But yeah, it seems to be doing really well. We're slowly picking up traction. But yeah, that's where the concept came from, the origins of it. It's just really get other people out.
Are you going to record any while you're rowing your boat?
Yeah, there'll be some behind the scene ones there, I'll tell you. We'll do a special without a doubt.
When are you going to try and do the row?
So the aim is to do it summer next year, and the reason for that is our children broke up from the summer last week for 12 weeks, and so for us it's like what I want to do is actually have them sort of handrailing the coastline as well on an RV with a couple of members of the family, and then they can come out and say hi as well. So because I think for me, I'm used to being away from the family for long periods of time. For Lana, not just the physical aspect of this. What's going to be hard for her is that disconnect.
Does she get seasick?
I don't know. There'll be plenty of tablets. Again, these are all new things we need to test.
My wife gets terribly seasick.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And we were gonna. I had that check in my hand. I was gonna buy a sailboat. This is when we were young, and I was gonna buy a sailboat for us to live on, because it's real expensive to live in San Diego. And so I had the check in my hand. I got a loan from Navy Federal Credit Union for like $18,000, and I was going to buy a boat, a 1913 gaff-rigged wooden schooner, just the most ridiculous boat, like 55 feet long. And thankfully I had like a moment of clarity as we were getting ready to drive up. It was actually up in somewhere up in LA, and I had a moment of clarity, as the alcoholics say, where I was like, yo, this is a bad decision. Because if you know anything, because I always liked wooden boats, because they're there's this romantic thing behind wooden boats, and I was we're going to live aboard a wooden boat. Wooden boat, you have to work on your wooden boat every single day, and from bow to stern. Yeah. And you start at the bow, and by the time you get to the stern, you got to go back to the bow again. You got to start it again, and it just never stops. And by the way, if you don't mow your lawn at your house, no big deal. You got some lawn grass. If you don't freaking maintain your boat, it sinks. Yeah. So thankfully, I had a moment of clarity. We didn't do that. But the other thing is, which I don't remember if my wife disclosed to me or not, she gets terribly seasick. Wow. And so by the time we decided we weren't going to do it, and she goes, it's probably better because I get seasick anyway. So I was like, yo, you might not want to tell me that before we buy a boat to live on.
I might ask Alana that. I haven't actually asked her yet.
If people get seasick, it's terrible. Yeah. Like it's a terrible thing. Going out to sea on a ship, you'd see people that get seasick, and they would just be such rough shape. Right on, man. Does that get us up to speed? Is that where we're at?
Yeah, that gets us up to speed. Yeah, we're just the other things we're doing as well, we're looking at doing coaching, guest speaking. For me, it's tried to share the knowledge of what we've done, and hopefully, whether it's in corporate, whether it's your own in development, individual growth, we sort of want to share that as well. So we're looking at launching them soon. And one other thing I'm working on in the background is that I'm 47 years old. I've never done weights before in my life, and so I get a lot of questions, as do you. How do I become a Navy SEAL? How do I become an SBS? And it's like what you don't see is the hard work we've done before. So for me, I'm looking at designing a website and a training app based around military fitness, because what I have the luxury of here is you have other fitness apps out there, and then whether it's a Ranger or a SEAL or a Green Beret, and the content of that app is from the author, from their own experiences. What I have the luxury of here is I've gone around the world visiting the special forces, seeing their different types of training, and so literally I've had everyone sending me in their training programs, and non-gym related, don't need a gym. It's all, as you know, when you used to do courses, I used to get tested on how many pull-ups could you do, how many press-ups, dips, how fast can you run, how far can you yomp. It wasn't how much can you bench press or curl. And then also I remember being in Kosovo in 99, and I'm not going to throw the USMC under the bus, but there was a couple of guys who were like Hollywood superstars. They were massive. These guys, I looked at them, even I was impressed. But then we went on operations, and I remember having to climb up into a helicopter and rope, and they struggled. So for me, when I was in the military, it was a balance of being able to pass those tests and pass them well, but also being able to perform my role. And so as we saw with COVID, when the gyms all shut down, everyone was having to improvise. So my aim with this fitness app is basically putting together a training program, or you can select the various, whether it's DevGru, CAG, SAS, SBS, Royal Marines, Parachute Regiment, how we can best prepare them if they're looking at going on them. So it's whether the audience is those who want to join the military. And I think as we're seeing, I know the DOD, the MOD, they're struggling to get people in at the right fitness levels, and so target them. There's those in the fitness industry anyway who just have a general interest in military. And then obviously now the growth of tactical games, shooting them and doing exercises. So that'll be my audience. So for me, it's just literally developing an app that people can do and just learn from myself.
Do you at least need a pull-up bar for this workout?
You probably would need a pull-up bar, but it's not make or break. There are other exercises you can do. You can develop those muscles. So for me, I call it non-biased training. If I'm busy, it's hard. I'm talking to the guy who gets up at 4:30 in the morning. But if your life's busy, especially when I was traveling around the world, I would just improvise and do stuff in the room. But I would do probably 500 press-ups a day. 10 sets of 50, but I wouldn't do them all at once. I would do like a few emails and then I'd do 50. Or if I walk past the toilet, then I'd do 50. So before you know it, you're keeping yourself ticking over. So they're the sort of things that I put in there as well, because everyone has busy lives, but that's not an excuse. You can still do exercises and stay in shape.
And when are you putting that together?
So I'm putting that together at the moment, and my aim is to have that launched by the end of the year.
What's it going to be called?
Ooh, that's a good one. I was thinking either Tough. Tough. But it might. Yeah, at the moment it's just called Tough.
Okay. Yeah. Right on. Awesome, man. So Where can people find you for the coaching and the speaking and stuff like that? It's deanstott.com.
That's it, deanstott.com, and you get myself on Instagram, yeah.
And on Instagram, you're at Dean Stott. On Twitter, X, you're at Dean Stott SBS.
That's it, yeah.
And then the YouTube and the podcast is Behind the Scene, SEEN.
Yeah.
And that's with Alana.
Yeah,
and we'll get
behind
Alana
the scenes show as well, yeah.
At some point, we'll get Alana on here to share her side of this whole story.
Yeah,
the real story.
Yeah, the real story, yeah. Because I think, we talk about the plant medicine, when I went on, when you talk about trauma, I think Alana has more trauma than, and actually, my Ibogaine told me to take Alana to the medicine, and she's gone and done hers since as well. Okay. So yeah, it's quite powerful.
Looking forward to that debrief. Yeah. Right on. Echo Charles, you got any questions?
Yeah, a couple questions. So your Ibogaine trip, is that what you call it?
No, journey.
So did you feel sick at all? Did you get sick at all? Because that's a big part of it, right? A lot of the time, where you can throw up and stuff.
So you go in and you have to write down your intentions. What are your intentions? So for me, it was a lot of it's about managing ego. That's where a lot of guys, confront your ego. So for me, I wanted to be present. I wanted to be more open to my family. So you write down your intentions. And it's really difficult because you have intentions, but you can't have expectations. And so it's quite a big difference between. And so you write down your intentions. And I had 4 intentions. And so I purged 3 times during my Ibogaine, but I could feel it at the bottom of my stomach that there was one more. And then literally on the 20th hour, I purged the 4th one.
And is it like, when you say purge, obviously you mean like you threw up, physically actually throwing up?
Yeah, so with that one, you were throwing up, but obviously you don't eat. That's why on the build up to it, the week before, they tell you not to take caffeine, not to have red meats and things like that. And so there's a strict diet going into it, and then on the day of it, it's just certain foods because they know that you're going to purge. So not really much comes up. And then on the DMT is the same. It almost feels like there's something coming out of your body. So it's just releasing it from your body.
And it feels like it's like you said it's like the bad energy or whatever. Does it actually feel like that, or are you just like, I'm kind of nauseous right now? And
I felt it building up inside, and I knew it was coming. No, a couple of times it surprised me. It just came from nowhere. Yeah. But then a couple of times you feel it coming up. Yeah.
That's crazy. Other question: dirty PT, right? Dirty PT and clean PT. I realized this concept before too, like from a long time ago.
Because he played football in college.
Oh, okay,
so he's Mr. Clean PT over here.
Yeah,
and kind of for real,
bro, big time now. Yeah. Like he'll be like, "Hey, let's go train." I'll be like, "Well, today's kind of like I already did this. This is part of the rest period of my training, program or whatever." But dirty PT and I want to make sure I understand it because it's interesting to put it into words like that because they're both like super beneficial in my opinion. Even when I know about it, which is very little right now. Dirty PT is like, hey, let's see how you can perform under whatever circumstance, whether you're starving, fasting, 1 minute sleep, 10 hours, whatever, right? It's like under whatever circumstances, we're going to just see how good you can perform.
Yeah, I think it's just not what you're used to. A good example of one is Sir Steve Redgrave. He was a Olympic rower. He had the most gold medals to UK. This guy was a machine. On the concept 2, he would literally just perform until he collapsed. He would fall off this machine. He did one of those ocean rowings and came off. Because for him, he just couldn't. He wasn't in that environment. He wasn't in the environment he was used to. He wasn't getting the food and the sleep that he needed. Right, so really, I think it's just the environment that you're operating in. And in the special forces where we are, we go in thinking we're doing something. You think we're going to go on the ground and then you're going to move 15 miles to a target area and then realize actually, no, the mission's changed. We're going somewhere else. And so for me, it's just that uncertainty, which the professional sports people don't really get caught out on. The worst case scenario for you is you go into overtime. That's it. Whereas for us, you could parachute in, you could go on your ankle, over your ankle. You then just got to strap that up and keep going. So it's just 2 different ways of operating. You guys are physically fit as it is. It's just the environments that we have to perform in. Yeah. And so mentally, some of them, they can't cope with it. They are the Olympians and the gold medalists, but they want their sleep, they want their food.
Right. And we
can't cope.
Yeah, like that's essentially it. Where it's like, hey, you get into these physically and mentally unknowns in like performance or whatever. You're like, you just sort of shut down just because you're really not used to it at all.
Yeah.
Like if I'm doing 5 rounds, or if I'm doing 8 sets of something, and Jocko comes in and says, hey, we're going to do a bunch of like pull-ups. No, it's like, bro, that's not part of the program. Bro, I probably won't be able to do any pull-ups because today's not pull-up day.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? So it's like, yeah, it's a different approach overall even.
You're kind of the shining example of clean PT, to be honest with you.
Yeah, man. Hey, whatever works, I guess. Right?
Bro, when you trained the other day,
Yeah.
Friday?
Friday? Yeah.
I was like so surprised you trained
Why?
because you came to film and yet you just trained.
No, that was Thursday. So
okay.
I trained a couple rounds, and then
Yeah.
Friday I really trained.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
I was kind of surprised because normally I knew it wasn't,
Yeah.
what you were showing up there for.
Well, I'm over here at that.
But you kind of got hyped too.
Well,
It's a good room, right?
It was a good room.
Good
I
room.
didn't see Keenan for a while. I hardly, I see Noah, but no, I don't. Yeah, so circumstantial. So yeah, jumped in there a couple times, got hyped.
But you are a really good example of clean PT.
Yeah,
and that's a big deal too. Like when you think about, I mean, you always hear these stories like, oh, this guy was a college football player or he was an Olympic. I had an Olympic alternate gymnast in my SEAL training class that quit, right? I mean, how strong is this dude? An Olympic alternate gymnast? I mean, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And he quit.
Yeah.
And I also had a NCAA water polo player. Like those guys are studs, quit. And so you think to yourself, oh, that's so weird. And I was like a below average athlete, in high school, whatever, just a loser. And yet, I'm going to tell you what, I'm going to keep going.
Yeah.
I'm going to get real dirty over here.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Because a lot of
Kind
times.
of like, honestly, the mats of justice. You've seen it many times. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep going.
I think it's the ones that, as you touched on, the ones that have overperformed in the sports industry. They're used to success and getting their praise. But when you come in another environment, they're not used to it. Gentleman Rich Davini. Rich Davini?
Yeah.
He wrote the book Attributes. Now, he talks about that, how he had, on paper, these guys were rock stars coming through Dev Group, but they always passed. They were always accomplishing. They didn't know how to deal with failure. They didn't know how to deal with when things were getting hard. And that's where and that's what it is. It's what I find that similar to those who over successes in sport.
Yeah. And that being said, there's guys that were freaking tremendous athletes in college in any kind of sport, and they're total studs in the SEAL teams. It's not a universal thing.
Right.
It's just, it is more interesting when you see a guy that was a total stud. Look, when you see a guy that's a total stud and was a college wrestler or a water polo player in college, like those guys, I knew those guys in the SEAL teams, they're freaking awesome frogmen. You kind of expect that, though. What you don't expect is someone that wrestled at Iowa or Oklahoma or something. Like these dudes they're barely even human. You know what I mean? They're barely even human. If you wrestled at Iowa, you're sort of, there's another category for you.
Yeah.
If you were a collegiate wrestler, you're sort of almost not human. And then you can take that with many sports. Wrestling is a very obvious example, though, because of the abuse that you take.
Yeah.
And then those guys show up and quit.
Yeah.
D1 wrestlers quit.
Yeah. So this is an idea that can show itself in many ways. Remember, Jason Gardner actually said essentially what you just said, studied, where he was like, hey, he said it real funny when he was on. He was like, some of these guys, they're not used to losing. So they lose one thing and they're mentally just done. Yeah. Me, I've been a loser from the beginning. Remember when he said, I've been losing since I was a kid or whatever. But anyway, yeah. So it's like, okay, so take a person.
Which, by the way, is that's a little bit of extra humility coming from Gardner, because Gardner's like kind of a stud.
Yeah.
Gardner was a water polo player, believe it or not. And he was like really good.
Yeah, and obviously he was being funny.
He's being funny and humble,
and it was very funny too.
Yeah, but he certainly wasn't a collegiate water polo player. So we'll take it.
Well, the idea isn't necessarily how good or junky Gardner was. It's more like, hey, I'm used to this adversity of not being on top all the time. It was essentially that. So like, okay, so in jiu-jitsu, for example, where if you're like a lot of times like real, like big power lifters or something like this, someone who has a huge top end strength. They're used to that top end. When I push this guy, he's even at the same size as me. When I push him, I know what's going to happen. He's going to go flying because I'm so strong, and I'm very, very used to that. You go 1 round, 2 rounds, 3 rounds. Oh, 1 round, actually, a lot of times. Yeah. 1 round, that next round, your top end strength is now at about 15%. And you're still strong. but you're not used to that discrepancy. So you feel like, oh my gosh, I'm useless. I'll never get it back. So it's like mentally you're not used to being there. You know, where like a person who is more just a conditioned person, or a person who's just used to that kind of weird like discrepancy in strength, or they don't have a big discrepancy in strength. Their top end isn't that high anyway. So when they get tired, they're still at like 60, 70, 80%, really, you know. But these guys who lose so much of their strength, bro, what am I going to do? I'm useless. I'm worthless. I might as well not even be here, kind of a thing, you know. It's like they're just not used to that.
And jiu-jitsu really exemplifies that, because the strength that you put into someone can be so easily absorbed or deflected,
and it's just gone. And it's just gone. It did, like, you can't get it back. It's weird.
Someone will work so hard, and the person that knows jiu-jitsu is using, you know, probably 10% of their energy, and the person that doesn't know jiu-jitsu is using 90, if not literally sometimes 100% of their energy to try and
the full strength,
and they're trying to squeeze your head. Like, you're not going to squeeze my head until I tap. You know what I mean? Like, from a headlock position, of course. I had Sloan freaking choke my face the other day. He's basically squeezed my head.
That's
I
different.
tapped.
That's a lot different.
This is a different scenario, but he's got technique too. It's not just strength.
It's not power lifter strength anyway.
And it's technique too. It's not like you can put me in a headlock and squeeze as hard as you want. I'm not tapping. You know? Okay, I don't know. Maybe Magnus Magnuson or someone like that. You think you can squeeze your head? You think you'd actually?
Like, I feel like some of those guys who squeeze my head like this and crack it. Like, that's how it feels. So I don't know. But
for the most part,
you're gonna handle that for sure. But yes. So I think that's it though. That discrepancy that certain people are not used to, that gets them for sure.
Any other questions, Echo Charles?
No, that was it. The dirty PT. I've learned to embrace the dirty PT a little bit more.
You've grown into it.
Yeah, fully. And a lot of times too, and it shows itself in little ways, right? Where, so the other day I mentioned this, where I'd already worked out. My workout was fulfilled for the day. Then my kids, they want to play soccer, they want to play freeze tag, and they never want to stop. 4 hours I was out there. I'm like, bro, this is like, I'm getting tired and all this stuff, whatever. But I'm like, no, this is the kind of I didn't know the term. I do now, thank you. But it was dirty PT. See what I'm saying? I was like, no, this is part of the, hey man, bro, you'd be surprised. These kids nowadays, they're running around freaking hours. Anyway, but yeah.
But you can't ever say no to that. Like, if your kids want to play, you gotta get in the game. I used to have that rule. Like, if my kids were doing something productive, I would not put a stop to it. Like, almost no matter what it was. There is a situations that occur where my daughters can get real loud. You know what I mean?
like what?
Singing.
Okay. Yeah, that's
singing.
Different.
But
That's
I'm talking singing with the kind of overall goal of making me tell them to be quiet. Like, that's their purpose. So they used to do that when they were younger. I'd be like, okay, you're done. Because, you know, your kids are going to sing. Cool. Like, great. Sing all you want.
Performances.
No, I actually had to stop that. It's not sing all you want. It's sing all you want. Now, when I tell you to stop, you got to be quiet.
That's a good rule, though. Like, you can't kind of say no. Because I don't necessarily feel like it or something like that. If it's productive, bro, they're kind of outperforming you.
Yeah, because especially if it's like, they want to cook something, they want to draw something, they want to repaint something, they want to build something, they want to do whatever they want to do. If it's something productive in the world, you gotta, as much as you possibly can, say yes.
That's a good
Say,
rule.
yep, go ahead and do it. They want to freaking rip apart the garden because they want to plant some tomatoes. Like, that's the kind of stuff a 7-year-old will come home. Like, I want to plant tomatoes. And you're like, okay, here's the shovel. And they're ripping apart your yard and getting dirt everywhere. But you just got to, support. Support. That's what we're doing.
What about this? And I'm saying this now off the top of my head because I just got asked to do this. So my son likes to go down this canyon that we have and just start chopping down trees. Because you know all those knives, the extra knives and axes that we have? He got into those. He was like, hey, we should go chop down trees.
Is he doing something with the lumber?
No.
Like, you got to collect that lumber and then bring it and then build a fire with it at night? Get it with a little fire pit?
Yeah.
Why are you making a face like this is a bad idea? This is one of the best ideas you've ever heard.
It sounds like a great idea. I'm just saying how far off.
Plus, you got the fire pit.
We have the fire pit.
Yeah.
It's not wood burning, but I guess.
No, you got the fire pit, the wood burning fire pit.
Oh, the one that we got.
Yeah.
No, I don't have that one. I think Joe has it.
Okay. Well,
thanks. Good tips.
Chop down the trees,
awesome.
collect the wood, build fires, cook, hot dog.
Sure.
That's what we're doing.
Okay. All right. Good to see you.
You good?
Dean
Yeah,
Stott.
anybody.
Right on. Dean, any closing thoughts, bro?
No, none for me. I just appreciate you guys. Hopefully another 3 years we'll have more stories. I just can't believe how quick the 3 years has gone from being at your house on Memorial Day, and lots happened. But now here as a citizen of America with a green card, that was a process. That's a whole podcast in itself. We'll talk about it another day.
Yeah, I've been through that a little bit with my wife, but you did it probably times 5 to get 2 Brits in here.
Yeah, 4 with my kids. Yeah.
Right on. Well, thanks for joining us once again, man. Always awesome to see you. Thanks for sharing your lessons learned. Of course, thanks for your service to your country, which is our strongest ally, the United Kingdom. And I guess now you're an American. You have an American. So are you an American now?
I'm still Brit. I'll end up having a dual passport. I have an American daughter.
Okay.
Yeah, I have an American daughter, and I have a Scottish son and a Scottish daughter, a Scottish wife, and I'm English. So it's like a start of a joke.
Well, outstanding, man. Well, thanks for doing what you're doing,
Thank you.
taking care of people and helping people out around the world. Appreciate it. Good seeing you, bro.
Thank you, buddy.
And with that, Dean Stott has left the building. He actually left me with a cool knife here from Trained Monkey. And it says Discipline Equals Freedom on it. And it's got Dean Stott's little frogman symbol of the frog foot. Sweet. So, still been getting after it. Dean Stott.
Yep.
When he said, "Hey, I don't use weights,"
Yeah.
I thought you were going to ask him about that.
I was about to, but
And then
I didn't want to ruin the flow. But
Check. It's very old school. And when I say old school, I'm only talking about like 10 years ago. When I got to SEAL teams, there was all kinds of people that didn't use weights.
Yeah.
All kinds of people. What do you need weights for? Pull-ups, push-ups, dips,
Yeah.
sprint, run, swim. That's it. That's what we're doing.
Yeah, fully. And, I've said this before where there's not just one approach to working out. And I think that's why, and same thing with diet, same thing with raising kids, same thing with spirituality. And I think that's why they always get into these arguments. Not always, but a lot of the time they can trigger arguments.
People have closed minds.
Yeah, they're like, no, my way is the best, because if you say your way is the best, that means my way is worse than yours. Like, bro, that's, it's on from there, So, but I do agree with that. I agree. Like, yeah, I guess pains me to say you don't need weights to be in great shape.
Oh, you definitely don't.
I'll tell you right now, I can't bike as far as he biked. Probably won't be able to row. There's a lot of stuff I can't do straight up that he can.
The row thing sounds kind of cool.
Yeah.
Rowing down the coast of California. It sounds cool right now. If it's a big sea state, 5 weeks, but also getting a resupply. I wasn't kidding. Like, can you imagine getting a pizza? Like you're out at sea and they just show up with a freaking triple cheese pizza. Yo, I'd be so pumped. That's one thing. When you're going through basic SEAL training, you are eating cheese pizzas or pizzas, whatever flavor you like.
Yeah.
Like with wanton abandon of any concern whatsoever.
Yeah.
It is just pure enjoyment with all aspects of health. They're not. It's not that you're not thinking about them. They don't exist.
Yeah.
They just don't exist. You're just. There was times where I would eat a extra cheese pizza every day.
The whole thing.
Yeah. Just part of the day.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you get done. We go to chow. We get done with whatever we got to get done. Order a pizza.
Yeah.
And this is when you could order a pizza. This is before 9/11. Like the gates to the base weren't really secured. Like the driver from Domino's would just show up and just drive on.
Wait, you said this is during Buds?
During Buds.
Yeah.
Yep. We had a payphone.
Yeah, hell yeah.
You have to call Domino's and they deliver. Just a stack of pizzas for the boys.
I feel like there's something real nostalgic about a payphone.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
Not much. It sucks, actually.
It sucks comparatively. You're right. Not very convenient.
Especially you got like 30 guys living in a barracks and there's 3 payphones or 2 payphones, something like that.
Yeah.
I think we could maybe call from like the quarterdeck phone too, because it wasn't a long distance call. So you could maybe we just called from the. I think there was a payphone in that little barracks though. But nonetheless, we were getting
coming.
pizzas.
Yeah,
we
and you're just burning in the pizza off. That's the point.
Just burning it off.
Yeah,
and you just want to get more food.
Yeah,
you're just. It's so good when you're in that lifestyle. You're literally just everything you do is just physical activity.
Yeah.
Everything you do.
Yeah.
You heard me say it. It's a mile to run to chow in the morning. It's a mile to run back. It's a mile to run to lunch. It's a mile to run back. It's a mile to run to dinner. It's a mile to run back. So before anything else in your day has even been calculated, you ran 6 miles. You jogged 6 miles.
It doesn't matter. Like how you get there, you burn the same amount of calories, more or less.
Yeah. So you
can walk.
So then you put in there a 4 mile timed run or an 8 mile conditioning run or an obstacle course, a swim.
Yeah.
Like a 2 nautical mile ocean swim. Like how many calories are you burning for that? And then you go and do a 3 hour dive with an hour and a half turtle back. Do you even know what turtle backing is? It's when you're just on the surface of the water with your dive rig on and you're just finning. You're just swimming on the surface of the water because you only can dive for so long. So if you have to go a long distance to get to the place that you want to attack, you don't have enough air to be underwater the whole time, so you just turtle back in for an hour and a half.
It's so unrealistic.
Ugh. Yeah, and then you go on back and dive for whatever, 2 hours, 2.5, 3 hours. You come up, just where's the pizza?
Bruh.
So if I was rowing down, I think I'd do kind of a nightly scenario. Just get to me, send the Coast Guard out with a couple triple cheese pizzas. Bro, pizza's good.
Bro, even you talking about, I mean, I didn't eat anything today, so yeah, pizza's sounding really good.
I'm tail end of a 48-hour fast right now.
So pizza's sounding really good to you.
I'm having Go. Yeah. So there's 10 calories in a Go. And I had a Hydrate, which has, how many calories 15. In a Hydrate? 15. So I've had 25 calories.
Whew. Yeah. Pizza's sounding good for sure. I saw that documentary, the documentaries they have on buds.
Yeah, yep.
And then that's part of what they talked about. Where
what
it's
talk about?
They said there's no relief in this scenario. Mm-hmm. There's only one moment of relief, and that's chow, or that's when they go eat. And it shows the guys like eating like just all kinds of crazy stuff, cake. Guys just like, but they're like half sleeping. Yeah. That guy, or I guess like right after you eat, you like. Guys are like nodding off. Totally. They stiffen up and stuff like that. It was showing that. But I remember that. I remember thinking like, bro, that's freaking hardcore right there because literally no relief. Yep. Doesn't matter. Like, except for eating. That's it. You don't even have the relief of sleeping.
Here's the funny thing. During Hell Week, as the students are in eating, the instructors are outside waiting, and they're like spraying the windows with the hose. And you know what I mean? So that even though there's, quote, no relief, you're just thinking, oh, as soon as this is over, which, by the way, chow is, I don't know how long chow is in Hell Week, but it's not long. It's not like you're in there cruising. Yeah, it's not like you're in there like, hey, can you,
it's not a lunch break.
Yeah, it's not a lunch break. It's probably 20 minutes or something like that. Yeah. And then the hoses are going outside, and they brush your teeth when you get out with a hose.
Spray in
so you're just like,
it sucks.
So your relief is just filled with anticipation.
Yeah.
To get some. Yeah. All right. Well, hey, pizza is not optimal fuel. Maybe if you're going through SEAL training,
sure.
Maybe it's a good addition to your fuel, but you're probably going to need cleaner fuel for life. I recommend Jocko Fuel. Go to jockofuel.com. Check out the new Hydrate energy drink that we got, which is freaking amazing. How amazing is it?
It's very amazing. It's surprisingly amazing.
It doesn't seem feasible.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem feasible that you could make something taste this good and have no sugar in it and have no artificial sweeteners because we got it done.
Or colors, by the way.
Yeah, and it's also clear because in order to have a cool color, you need to put artificial coloring in there.
Yep.
And you can add something. There's some things that have like a natural coloration, but then you're adding it for no reason. What are you doing that for?
Just for the color.
Just for the color? So, no, we got the clean stuff. Yeah. Hydrate. We got protein. We got joint warfare, super krill. We got it all. If you want to get this stuff, go to jockofuel.com. Also, you can get it at Wawa. You can get the protein shake at Wawa. Freaking so tasty. Vitamin Shop, GNC, military commissaries, AFES, Hannaford's, Dash Stores in Maryland, Wake Firm, ShopRite, HEB. HEB down in Tejas. Getting it done. They have racks at HEB. They have racks of Jocko Fuel at Meijer. They have racks of Jocko Fuel at Wegmans. Go get some. Harris Teeter, Lifetime Fitness, Shields, and small gyms everywhere. We got Action Jackson.
Yeah, of course.
Jackson. He's out there. Him and Jared are just out there. and Chaz just getting it into every like niche gym nutrition supplier. So if you want to get in on that game, JF Sales at jockofuel.com. Get the good stuff for your clients, for your athletes, for your gyms. Jiu-jitsu, CrossFit, powerlifting, Globo Gym, whatever. Get them the goods. JockoFuel.com. Check it out.
Yes, fuel. It's true. Also, Origin USA. You wanna? Okay, so we can start with jiu-jitsu. Sure. Gis, rash guards, jiu-jitsu gear. Made in America, by the way. But that's not all. So jeans, I think as of right now, the front running deal is jeans. That's just me, because I don't go hunting as much as you at all. Like, so it's different. But the jeans are the front runner. So Delta 68, these are the more athletic ones.
Well, they're just lighter weight.
Yeah, and they're more stretchy.
Okay.
I know this because I was just wearing the factory jeans. And this is fresh on my mind because I have some people in from out of town, and then the question came up. So, yes, more maybe like
what was the question?
Like what kind of jeans, or like what's up with these jeans? What's so special about these jeans? So, yeah, I broke it down.
And then a bald eagle flew in from overseas, from overhead, carrying an American flag, releasing slaves from sweatshops. And cleaning the environment all in one swoop.
Yes, that is exactly what happened, Jocko.
Bestowing upon the earth the most comfortable jeans, and hoodies, and T-shirts, and hunt gear. Is that what happened?
Yeah, that's exactly what happened.
You should make that into a commercial.
Maybe I will. But yes, nonetheless, yes, jeans, all different colors. But the significant thing is A, the quality. B, made in America, or that could be probably flipped around, right? Made in America, quality. Everything's made in America, though. Even the thread, even the cotton grown, made in America. The whole deal.
Buttons.
Even the brass buttons. Brass, right?
Yep. There you go. OriginUSA.com. Check it out. Also, we have a jiu-jitsu camp up in Maine. And we do it every year. It sells out real quick. But right now we still have some spaces open for our law enforcement, first responder, military jiu-jitsu training. August 27th through the 31st in Maine. Come and get it. Come learn some good tactics, defensive tactics, to keep control over people when you need to. So check that out. All at OriginUSA.com. Also, we have a store.
It's true. It's called Jocko Store.
Yeah, you made that up, didn't you?
No, it was advised onto me. So at Jocko Store, not only can you get Discipline Equals Freedom shirts and hoodies and hats and stuff like that, you can get, good, we're going to represent on the path. It's true. But not only that, we have something called the Shirt Locker, which is a subscription scenario. If you didn't know, different design every month. And I say this is the front running thing because this is something that apparently people are very, very into.
Check.
Giving me ideas and all the stuff for different designs. So I will give you a hint on the design, Jocko. Back to the book. But it has a theme similar to like the sugar-coated lies. You know how it had a theme? It's like that.
What's the theme?
Can't tell you. You got to go to jockostore.com, click on the shirt locker. It'll say the June shirt, and it'll have a little hint, little sneak peek. Check. Anyway, so yeah, if you want to know about that kind of stuff, go there. So yes, jockostore.com. That's called the shirt locker, but you can buy whatever other representation apparel items on there as well.
Check. Also, primalbeef.com, coloradocraftbeef.com. Awesome steaks. Get steaks. Get meat sticks. Get some burger meat. Check it out. You want the good stuff. You don't want stuff that's coming from a factory farm. You want stuff that's coming from the goodness, from the earth. ColoradoCraftBeef.com, obviously from Colorado. Primal Beef from the Shenandoah Valley, Virginia. Just amazing steak. Go give it a shot. Awesome companies, awesome people. There you go. Also, subscribe to the podcast. Also, JockoUnderground.com. We're about to record a couple of those. Also, we have a YouTube channel. Jocko Fuel has a YouTube channel. Origin USA has a YouTube channel. That's what's happening. Psychological Warfare. You can get that. FlipsideCanvas.com. Dakota Meyer. Making cool stuff to hang on the wall. Books. Obviously, we just talked about this book a little bit today. We covered it on the podcast 270. Relentless by Dean Stott. Check it out. Also, I've written a bunch of books about leadership, about war, about laundromats. Yeah, I wrote a book about laundromats called Final Spin. You may have heard of it. You may have read it. You may have laughed. You may have cried. But you learned. Also, I've written a bunch of kids' books. Way of the Warrior Kid 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Hey, we got a movie coming about that with a guy named Chris Pratt. You know Chris Pratt?
Yeah. You're great.
He's your bro, isn't he?
Hell yeah, he is.
Really cool to see that coming to fruition. The screenplay is awesome. Directed by a guy named Mick G.
Terminator Salvation, by the way.
There you go. Amongst a bunch of other flicks. Great movement forward on that. But listen, you don't have to wait for 1 year to see that movie. You don't have to wait. You can read the books. You can get those books to your kids. It will change the way they go through life. So check those out. Also, Mikey and the Dragons. Also, About Face by Hackworth. You guys know the jams. Hey, Echelon Front, we have a leadership consultancy. We solve problems through leadership. Go to echelonfront.com for details on that. We have the muster coming up in Dallas, 16 to 18 October. Also, the Women's Assembly, September 11th through the 13th in San Antonio, Texas. FTXs, I think the last FTXs or the upcoming FTX is sold out. So if you want to come to one of these events, go to echelonfront.com, check events. Also, if you need help inside your organization, we have a leadership consultancy. That's what we do. And you can find more information there at echelonfront.com. We also have an online training academy about leadership and life. So if you want to improve every aspect of your life, go to extremeownership.com. Take one of the free courses that's on there. Just go take it. It's free. I don't care. Just go take it. It's free. That's it. It's going to help you. And if you want to help service members, active and retired, you want to help their families, you want to help Gold Star families, check out Mark Lee's mom, Mama Lee's charity organization, americasmightywarriors.org. And also, don't forget that General McFarland came on and he talked about a memorial that is being refurbished by the 11 AD to commemorate and memorialize the men and women who were lost in combat in the Battle of Ramadi. So if you want to help restore and replant that memorial, you can also do it through americasmightywarriors.org. As well, don't forget about heroesandhorses.org, Micah Fink. And then we got Jimmy May's organization, beyondthebrotherhood.org. It's really a methodology of finding people from the SEAL teams and other special operations, screening them, making sure that they are up to the task, and then finding the right job for them in the civilian sector that's going to utilize the skill sets that they learned in the military, teach them some new skills, and get them ready to get it done out there in the civilian sector. So that's beyondthebrotherhood.org. Once again, if you want to connect with Dean Stott on the interwebs, check deanstott.com. He's on Facebook and Instagram at Dean Stott. And he's on Twitter, X, at Dean Stott SBS. He's also got his YouTube channel and his podcast, which is Behind the Scene, SEEN. And that's with his wife, Alana, who's got a ton to offer as well. So check that out. And if you want to get in touch with Echo and I, you can find you can find all my stuff at jocko.com. Also, I'm on social media at Jocko Willink. Echo is at Echo Charles. Just be careful because there's an algorithm on there. And it'll grab you like by your pinky and then just pull in the rest of your whole soul. So watch out for it. Thanks once again, Dean Stott, for coming and joining us. And thanks most of all, of course, for your service. And thanks to the military men and women from the armed forces in America here, but also all of our allies, including Great Britain and the rest. We've stood shoulder to shoulder around the world with you all, and we thank all of you worldwide for your service and sacrifice. And to our police, law enforcement, firefighters, paramedics, and EMTs, dispatchers, correctional officers, Border Patrol, Secret Service, and all other first responders, thank you for your service, keeping us safe here on the home front. And to everyone else out there, just remember that there's choices we make every day. Choices we make every day to get better or to get worse, to build or to decay, to move forward or to sit and rot. Make the right choice. Make the right choice. And you do this by getting up every day and getting after it. And that's all we've got for tonight. Until next time, this is Echo and Jocko out.